The budget hearing of the Township Council is called to order. In accordance with Section 5 of the Open Public Meeting Act, Chapter 231, Public Law 1975, be advised that adequate notice of this budget hearing of the Township Council of the Township of Franklin, County of Somerset, was made by the posting on the bulletin board of the municipal complex and transmitted to the officially designated newspapers indicating that this budget hearing would take place at the Franklin Township Municipal Complex at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, February 16th, 2016. In addition, a copy of this notice is and has been available to the public and is on file in the office of the municipal clerk. If everyone would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, please take the roll.
Deputy Mayor Chase, Councilwoman Francois, Mayor Kramer,
Yes, here.
Councilman Onijaka, Councilman Prasad,
Yeah.
Councilwoman Robinson, Councilwoman Sherman,
Here.
Councilman Vasanella,
Here.
Councilman Wright.
Here.
Okay. We will now, the next item is public discussion. We will limit public discussion to 1/2 hour and 2 minutes per speaker. Is there a motion to open the meeting for public discussion?
So moved. Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? I see none. All in favor of opening the meeting for public discussion, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is carried. The meeting is now open for public discussion on any item of interest related to government which does not have a public hearing of its own, and since there are no other public hearings, then it would be any item related to government. Anyone interested in speaking, please raise your hand when recognized. Give your name and address.
Seeing no one coming forward from the public, Mayor, I will motion to close the public portion of the meeting.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is carried. The public discussion is closed. We are now on to item 5, departmental budget presentations. So the first item A, is Community Resources. Diane Leach-Thompson. Welcome.
Mayor and Council, this is under the Community Resources tab, about halfway through the book. And the proposed budget that Mrs. Leach-Thompson brought forward is an increase of $77.
No.
Too much.
Yes, I look. The looks on your faces. Yes, I'm not quite sure how Diane came to the $77 increase. There's a little bit of up and a little bit of down on the community resources budget. Some decreases up at the top. You see 115 down, 78. Primarily, the one adjustment that was made was actually already made by me. There was a request initially for some additional monies in the other contractual items, but I believe that after conversation with Kathy Moody, our CFO, and Diane, we realized that funding should have been placed somewhere else. So it's in the trust for community resources, so that's why it's not so much that I cut $5,000 from Diane's budget. I just found an alternative to the regular budget for that funding. So.
And the $5,000 that Bob is talking about is the contingency budget for indigent burials. And that we usually have in every year. We've been fortunate we have not had to use it. And because these are individuals that are not eligible for welfare. So if someone in our town dies and they have no funds or family, then we would have to be responsible to bury them at the least cost possible.
But again, that money has been moved into trust from previous years, so there's
Correct.
more than enough money there now so that we don't have to fund it this year.
I'm sorry. The township would pay?
If, an indigent and citizen, yes.
I thought the county would.
No.
Essex County does because Newark is such a huge portion of it. Essex County does where you have your funeral home because Newark is such a huge portion of it. They made a deal that they'd pay for the whole thing, but in Somerset, each municipality is responsible for it.
Because down in, the only reason I asked is like down in Mercer County, again, it's the county that pays for it. Like Trenton City, they would go out to the county to pay for it through their welfare system. Now I understand Somerset. Okay.
That's, I was going to say, you hit two counties that have major kind of metropolitan areas that might have that service provided more
Glad
often
they do,
than
because
here.
they pay me. I'm loving them. Don't get me wrong. And for everyone out there, I'm a funeral director. That's why.
Trying to drum up business.
So as you can see, Diane's total budget is $14,821. Certainly quite a bit of service provided by that department for what amounts to a relatively small OE budget. So if there are any questions of Diane?
Community resources.
Thank you very much.
Now we're on to municipal court.
Seeing none.
Seeing none.
Municipal Court. Our new clerk.
Yes.
Well, new to this meeting.
She is,
She's been there
her
about 6
title
months.
is court administrator.
Court administrator.
Court clerk is an old time. Sometimes I'm guilty of saying that. That's probably why you say it.
Welcome.
So for some of you who have not met Kayla, this is Kayla Martinez. She is our court administrator. Kayla came on, about 6 months, 8 months ago now? And also in the back there is Raquel Edwards. That's our new deputy court administrator, who I invited up, but she's being shy. The court tab is in front of, I know I saw it somewhere here. Oh, here it is, behind. So. The court OE budget, as proposed, is a decrease of $530 over last year's budget. And one place in particular on the professional consultant and specialized services shows a $2,000 decrease, and I will let Kayla explain why she was able to reduce that particular line by $2,000. But Kayla, go ahead.
I was able to get a contract with Language Line Solutions, so we no longer will have to have a interpreter come in for every court session. We can use the language line. She will be used, or they will be used for trial purposes, but for first appearances and pre-trials, we can use Language Line now.
Good. I'm not sure what is language line.
It's a phone service that does interpreting.
It's actually the service that our police department has used for years. It's was provided through AT&T for many years. I don't know if it still is, but that was part of the AT&T world at one time. And it's just interpreters over the telephone. So obviously comes as a great benefit to dispatchers. But Kayla said, looked into it and found that, the courts allowed us to use it
And we actually
for those
used it for the
purposes.
first time on Tuesday.
There you go. So, and it's much more cost-effective than bringing in an interpreter, especially for first appearances and the like. So we're able to cut that.
We use
from
it
the
for our
budget.
physician practices.
It is used all over the
over.
country for a lot of different purposes, yes. So,
And it's
there's,
very inexpensive.
Yes,
especially compared to what we were paying for,
Yes.
hourly rates for
yes.
interpreters in the court.
And you can use all kind of interpreters too, not just
There's like
Spanish.
20-some languages that they,
Yes, everything.
yeah, it is true.
So actually, what is the rate? Because my understanding is it's like $2 a minute.
It's $170 a minute,
So, okay. Very good.
and a first appearance usually takes less than 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay.
And there's not minimums like I think there are with bringing the interpreters in,
No.
right?
No.
So that's where really you can, okay. Excellent.
My question, actually, this is the O&E budget, relates more to a capital budget item. So I did some weddings in the court, and this was a problem I noticed last time. I know I'm going to shock some people here, but I would not mind spending some money on that room, the ceiling tiles. Yeah, and the reason is that sometimes the only interaction people have with a municipality is the court and the courtroom. And the ceiling tiles, many need replacing. There's water stains on some of the ceilings. Right behind the judge, there's these two little metal pieces that are missing, and it's, you know, I'm not looking for mahogany desks and you know, a brand-new carpet, although that carpet's getting a little old. I'm just, I wouldn't mind money being spent to shape that up, but the manager's got his finger on the budget. Did I miss
I do.
something?
No, you didn't miss anything, Mayor. What I just wanted, you know, when we talk about the capital budget later on this evening, you know, one of the items on the capital budget for this year is an HVAC replacement for $175,000 for the public safety building. But a great deal of the problems that you see that exist in the court wing of the building are as a result of roof leaks that are as a direct result of problems. The HVAC systems, the air handlers live above the court.
So we fix those.
So we have to fix those, and it all kind of, so once we fix all of those things, then we can do the cosmetic work
Okay.
inside. So you're absolutely right. It's been a thorn in my side for a number of years now, and we are moving forward, and one of the air handlers, they're expensive, is on the budget
Okay.
this year. So you're right. Can't argue it. It's not attractive.
Yep.
What was even less attractive is when we used to have, you know, 5 or 6 recycling buckets in the lobby to catch the water dripping from the ceiling.
Really class act.
That stopped.
Any other questions for the municipal court? Administrative.
Just a comment. You're off to a great start. Wish you all luck and
Thank you.
keep the backlog down. And
Trying.
Well, you know, we you know, obviously the municipal court has been a great topic of discussion over the last couple of years, and I can say that I have the utmost confidence in Kayla and Raquel both. They're doing a fantastic job. Our backlog is down. Everybody in Somerville is very, very happy with the performance. It just seems to be moving in the right direction, so I think that we should all be very happy. I know I am.
It is wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excellent.
Keep up
Thank
the
you.
good work.
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So, next we will call Parks and Recreation, Ms. Alex.
Well, actually, next is the tax assessor.
Right,
and
but I don't see him.
he is not here, and he is actually out of state right now.
Oh,
So
okay.
if you will indulge me,
That's fine.
given their budget.
I didn't call him because I
No,
thought
I
he was late.
appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. Where are we at? It's in the
I
beginning.
called an audible.
Okay.
No one's going to applaud that I made a sports reference?
I'm going to pinch hit, yes.
It's out of character for me to understand this.
Nobody even heard what you said over
I
here.
said I called an audible.
He did,
Oh,
he
okay.
called an audible. I'm the pinch hitter. There's another one. You know, we can go.
Tax assessor.
Tax assessor.
Carabelli.
Mr. Carabelli, as I said, is unfortunately was out of state, and given the way we had to schedule these meetings on short notice, unfortunately, he was unavailable. I just simply draw your attention to the fact that this is another flat budget. There is no increase over last year's budget. Most of the money in the assessor's OE budget is associated with appraisals and consultants on appeals. That's the $120,000 line, 028. The actual for 2015 was 86,000. We're generally under, although you can see, go back to 2013, it was at 110. So appraisals are up and down based on the number that we need, based on the number of cases we have actually in the court. I think that we're all comfortable with that number in the budget right now. And the overall budget was at 75% roughly expended for 2015. So I think that holding the line here and not looking at making any decreases on a budget that was held at steady for 2016, I think is what was recommended by me. So if you have any questions about specifics in this budget, I can certainly get answers from Mr. Carabelli, but I think most of these are pretty basic and straightforward lines.
No questions?
All right, seeing no questions from the council, the municipal clerk is now on the line.
Mrs. McCarthy, I'll let you handle your own budget.
Okay. I have three budgets, the mayor and council, the elections, and the municipal clerk budgets. The election budget stayed the same, and the mayor and council and the township clerk ones decreased slightly. They should all be under the clerk tab. Any questions?
Yo.
As long as they're all going down. We got no questions.
Our association dues are up?
Which one?
Mayor and council, 44. Oh, they're the
Yeah.
same. I'm sorry. Oh, I'm looking at the temporary. Sorry. Never mind. Never mind.
The number that went down. The number that went down was on the council budget is the conferences and meetings was decreased.
Yep.
Leaving that the same.
Any questions for the clerk? Okay.
Before we go, Bob, do we talk about the part-time person?
There was a personnel request for the clerk's office, a part-time position that was requested.
So if you could explain that?
Okay, I had requested a part-time person to assist in Oprah requests and scanning the back documents in my office. To give you an idea on Oprah, one of my staff dedicates about 20 hours a week, and I dedicate about 5 hours a week in Oprah. We did 672 Oprah requests. This does not include people that come in and we give things to them right at the counter, and it doesn't include the Oprah in the police department. If you take my salary and my staff's salary and total it, our salary total is about $41,500. That is just on Oprah, which is about $61.83 per Oprah request. And we need help because 20 hours taking from the one staff member leaves her no time. She's also the registrar, and she does all the health licensing, and it's becoming an issue. And I need assistance in getting the back part of my office into the document imaging system. That's deeds and easements and that kind of thing. I've got all the ordinances in, but I need to get the rest of the minutes in and the agendas and all of our permanent stuff in there.
Any,
Where is it reflected in this?
I think it's reflected in Bob, where's the request reflected in the budget,
In the salary budget.
in the salary and wages?
That's in one of the packets I just gave you.
Okay.
Salary and wages.
Okay, because I didn't see it earlier. And what was,
It's in the general salary
was the
that you did
price?
have.
I'm price.
So
What
when we
was
get
the
to that
cost?
section, we can review the cost,
Sure.
because that's on the agenda later on tonight, right?
What?
For that part-time position? as
No,
far
this
as
is it now.
salaries?
This is where it is. I mean, and it's, if you go to the very beginning, Councilman, in the very beginning of your book
Right.
is the S&W And at the very end of the S&W is all the vacancies and proposals for new positions. If I'm, nope, you know what? I'm going to lie, aren't I?
When I put those together, I put it as the first.
Oh, it's the first page. See, I'm saying last page and it's the first.
I was just
okay.
wondering how much it was.
26,000.
Correct.
What page is this on?
It's under S&W tab
In your book.
in your book, under the
No,
S&W
no,
tab.
no, in the book. In your,
Yep, in the very beginning. You'll see the tab that says S&W. Summary.
Salaries.
And the
nothing in
last
there.
page, list of vacancies and new positions.
Okay, so I'm not judging it as a good idea or bad idea, I'm just trying to understand. So is this something that is, I know Oprah requests are going to be ongoing, but
They've-
is the other work that you're, not you, but the clerk's office is doing as far as, getting all the stuff in the permanent archives and whatnot, is that something, could you give us a timeline on that?
I couldn't tell you how long it would take to get everything that we have in our office.
But I mean, is it, to
documented.
get caught up, are we looking like this calendar year, next calendar year?
Years. We're over 200 years old. We've got a lot of,
No, I know, and at
there's a lot
different
of
times.
books. I'm talking years.
Okay, so is it, I'm just throwing out ideas, does it make sense to hire someone to do that, or contract out to do that, or the 25,000 for the position is mainly to handle Oprah requests? Is it something
Well,
that
it would be
can be
small.
more practical with
This-
targeted overtime? I don't know, I'm just asking
No, it
if
would
there's any
probably-
way, other options, and then the
This
other.
person wouldn't just do straight Oprah, because, I mean, there has to be, somebody has to, I mean, there are certain Oprah requests that I have to do. I mean, basically, the ones where I read 700 email is going to be me and not this part-time person. They can split, it would just alleviate, I'm not saying they're doing it all, they're going to do all the Oprah requests, but it's going to alleviate a big chunk of time that we're spending just on Oprah. And Oprah's just going to keep increasing. Every year, it increases by 100 to 200 more a year. I mean, it's just more. People know it's out there, and they want what they want, and they come in and they ask for it. So, and 90% of them is when someone sells a house and they want to know about every permit that is on their house, or any violation that's on their house. It's a lot of research.
And the part-time position, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
you're suggesting that would be plenty of
Yeah.
time to,
I think so. I think
Balance
it'll
out
take
the
a big dent
clerk's
out,
hours.
and it'll balance everything out.
did the administration committee, I don't sit on administration committee or financial oversight.
Financial
Have
oversight.
any input on, or discuss this, any recommendations, yea or nay?
It was, I believe, a unanimous recommendation to hire this.
Okay. Oh, I should probably
And
ask
the
that
other-
first, and I don't have any more questions.
Because there was another case made about the backloading and the back scanning of the documentation that you have. That whole effort also supported bringing this person on.
Anyone else?
Yeah, in fact, at the last hearing, you mentioned that the fire department wanted to have a part-time clerk, and
There's,
was
that-
more
in the last
Right.
budget hearing,
Right.
there was, so there was initial discussion about a full-time position versus two part-time positions, that's correct, and the decision was made to go with two part-time positions. It would be more cost-effective for the township, and also, the truth is, and while I hate to say things like this, but the realist in me is, if a part-time position is no longer necessary, a part-time position is eliminated.
Right.
And that's really the world that we live in.
Gives you a lot more flexibility.
It gives you a lot more flexibility, it certainly does. And that was why I made the recommendation when I did, when it was proposed initially to go a different direction.
Any other council members? So I'll ask a few softball questions. So with Oprah, what happens if we are late responding to Oprah?
If it looks like we're not late, if it looks like we're going to go past the 7 business days, then we contact the requester and ask for additional time. And that's happened quite often when, if they're asking for something substantial, or it's asked right at the beginning when we know right off the bat that if we are late, or if they don't feel that we have responded fast enough or given them what they've asked for, the township gets sued, or we could be taken to the GRC, which is the Government Records Council, and brought before them, and I could be fined personally.
I'll say, and that's the key there, and I was hoping she would say that, because if we don't meet the deadline and the person who has made the Oprah request brings the complaint to the Government Records Council and it's found that there was no valid excuse for the lateness, she gets fined, not the municipality, but the custodian of records. This is personally her that gets penalized. So I can understand why our clerk might want to ensure that all of these are met in a timely fashion.
And as I recall, that's one of the reasons why the clerk of Fire District 2 asked for the substantial
certainly
raise.
one of
He had
those
been
reasons.
fined once.
Yes.
Any other questions for the clerk?
And Anne Marie's over there wiping the tears off her eyes.
That's allergies, thanks.
Hearing no other questions for the clerk. Now, Parks and Rec.
Yes,
Ms.
now,
Alice Osipowitz.
Now, I apologize for being late. The police have closed off South Middlebush Road at Bennett's Lane. They were not so thoughtful as to also put an officer at the corner of Dahmer and Amwell Road to assist all the South Middlebush Lane traffic getting out of Dahmer onto Amwell. So it took me some 18 minutes to get through that stretch.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chase.
Not your fault, Alice.
not Alice's fault.
However, you are up at this time.
So now, if Councilman Chase asks you some pointed questions, you can blame the chief of police.
Alice, what is Parks and Rec doing about the traffic jam on South Middlebush?
I would like to know. I thought you were going to say that you got caught in the flooding of Canal Road between Coppermine and 518, but I guess you went the other way.
I wouldn't go that way.
That was good. Some chose to. So the police department's just stretched a little bit thin right now, and it was a very serious accident on South Middlebush Road that caused the closure.
Ms. Osipowitz.
So Mrs. Osipowitz is proposing a budget of an increase of $5,807. The primary increase is in 026, which is equipment repair and maintenance, which includes copier leases. What I will tell you, and I not to steal your thunder, Alice, is that the $4,807 increase in that line of the budget is for us to lease a color copier versus a black and white copier. There was an analysis done by Justin Hyman in the IT department, and what we determined was that it was more cost-effective to have a color copier for many of the things that the Recreation Department produces, as opposed to using the color printers with toner costs exceeding the costs of this $4,807. So we should overall see a cost savings. It just happens to be an increase in the recreation budget because that's where that copier lives. So, and you can talk about the $1,000 increase on recreation supplies.
We asked for an additional $1,000 for supplies. I feel like I would have been remiss in not accommodating a request from the Senior Advisory Committee for some additional, for $750, and we put another $250 in supplies for the Teen Rec program. So that is where the $1,000 comes from. So seniors have been expressing concern over their funding level, and I guess over maybe the last 3 years, have tried to increase it minimally over the past 3 years. So that is that request.
Any questions for Parks and Rec?
Nope.
Okay.
Okay, you can stick around a little while, and when we get to capital, we'll come back to you.
Information Technologies, Justin Hyman. Should I send a text to Fran to tell her she's on deck? Oh, she's in there. No, that's historic.
Historic is in the large room now. Oh, they switched again?
Yeah.
Apparently, we played musical conference rooms today.
So I shall text her. They are in the large conference room.
So, Justin Hyman is here to discuss the information technology budget. That budget shows an increase of about $7,100 on what is now a $168,000 budget. Justin, I'll let you describe your budget.
Sure. So primarily that increase, as council is probably used to me saying by now, is due to software support and maintenance contracts in the IT department. We, a number of years ago at this point, made a decision to realize some long-term cost savings by doing multi-year support contracts. So we pay more in certain years by having overall savings. That's primarily where the increase is. There are some small increases in training requests, trying to accommodate some succession planning in the office, and getting somebody the same certification I have, and that's really where the increases are. So the telephone budget I'm also responsible for, and that's a level budget this year. So.
And just from a training standpoint, the other thing that I just add is that the GIS position was filled last year. That's a full-time position and obviously requires some ongoing training that we previously didn't have in the IT budget.
Any questions? I have one question. It's kind of a manager question. So I've been talking with the library board. They have their own phone system. I've talked to the IT manager, and he's said that they could accommodate them. If there were additional costs, we would have room in the budget for that, to bring them on board.
So you're asking if
the
we would
library-
have that, if we brought the library on board to our phone system?
Right. That would slide within budget?
Yeah, I'm sure we could find a way to accommodate it between capital and, depending on the capital cost or the operating costs. But typically we have some.
Of course, they're paying $13,000 now, and you led me to believe it would
Yeah.
be minimal cost.
It would be a minimal cost to bring them over. Some phones would probably have to change over there, as we discussed. And then,
Of course,
yeah, I think between the two entities, we certainly would realize a savings. I think we may have to, put some costs on them, but it would probably be a
Right.
savings for both.
Sure.
So yeah, certainly capability-wise, we're there. Everything that we've looked at prior to that, there should be no issue. Again, we'd probably have to swap some phones out there. I think that would probably be the biggest cost.
Good. Very good. I do not. Any other questions? Okay, well, open space. Okay, we'll skip to Engineering Department and Public Works, and perhaps someone, Andy, would you mind going to open space and letting her know that she?
She's in there, she's probably,
Right.
I don't think she probably anticipated it being this quick.
Yep. So our Engineering, Department of Public Works and Water, Tom Zelnick, do we need to wait for Carl, or? No, we're good to go. Good.
I think we'll start. Yeah, we can start at engineering first, which I'm trying to find here.
Just go back a little bit more. You got it already? Okay.
It was just that one that was
Okay.
So on the engineering side of Mr. Zelenik's title, he is proposing a budget of $13,505, which is an increase of $2,605 over last year's budget of $10,900. The bulk of the expenses in the engineering department are developer escrow expenses, so that's why the OE budget seems to be low, but I'll let Mr. Zelenik explain his budget for you.
The budget is up 2,600. The main reason for it being up is we have to print our township maps this year, which is a $2,900 expense. The last time we did it was in 2011.
So
So
you see that pretty much exists. So his budget would have been reduced by about $300 were it not for the fact that we're paying for new maps out of his budget. And I had a question posed to me, in this day and age, why are we printing maps? And and I won't. And it's a legitimate question. Google Maps and the advent of the computer obviously has kind of made street maps, for argument's sake, obsolete. However, these maps are utilized by a number of different organizations, groups. We actually, and Anne Marie, what do we sell them for? $3. So we actually do sell them. People buy them. And so we on the revenue side, somewhere in that budget is a line for miscellaneous revenues, and street maps would be one of them. I don't know that we recoup all of our costs, but even internally, we still use these street maps for a number of different purposes. So it benefits us to have it up to date, and we've had a number of new streets since 2011. Councilwoman Sherman is nodding her head.
Yeah, I use them all the time.
We went through but we also went through a series of meetings with some of the gated communities in her ward and the first aid squads who are having difficulty finding new streets. GPS wasn't updated. The electronic version of mapping was not updated, and our street maps had those streets. So we wound up telling the first aid squads to rely on the paper maps because they were the most up to date at the time. So there is a purpose behind them.
The township should have official maps.
And it is because of that we do.
Right.
Yeah, and there are still people who don't use the Google Maps or have a computer, so we have to respect their
There are.
needs.
Are these the regular street maps or the, what we call the what to see
The
maps?
things to do, these are the regular street maps. The things to do maps are funded out of the open space budget.
Okay. Because I think those are being reprinted.
They're also being reprinted, yes, they are, and updated and reprinted. So are there any questions in reference to the engineering budget? Okay, then I will take you to the tab titled Streets, which will be the first of several Public Works budgets. The streets budget is proposed at $160,225, which is an increase of $1,450 over the 2015 budget. There have been some adjustments. Most notably, the adjustments are down from previous year's budgets. The increase is $4,100 in other contractual, which I'll let the gentleman to my left explain. That would be line 029.
that's an increase because of county line striping costs are going up. We use the county to stripe our roads for the annual restriping.
So that's an increase in the contract price that with the county. And otherwise, it really shows decreases in almost every line in the budget by some amount.
Correct. It's a 0.93% increase overall.
Are we just talking about the construct?
Just the streets and roads portion of the Public Works budget. It's under the streets tab.
So anyone have questions? So I do see a road materials, $10,000 increase. That's probably,
Am I missing something?
A lot of that has to do with just the way we're charging different line items. So we're charging things to the proper accounts, and we're cleaning that up every year. We're getting more and more things charged to the right account.
okay, but the total for that subsection is up $3,700. I mean, we're not talking, is this because materials are more expensive, or?
No, actually, believe it or not, materials held because the, petroleum kept going down.
Are we using more?
No, the adjustments came out of line 058.
Right,
which is the
that's-
bottom section that shows a $5,800 decrease.
Okay,
Oh, there you go.
That's what I was
Okay.
saying. It's just
Just
moving it to the
Move it
proper
from one
line.
line to the other.
got it. We are using the new hot patch. Is that in here? Is that figured differently?
It's in there, but,
Okay. Have
No
we
dollar
tried-
number.
Have we tried that yet? Is it working well?
It's been out multiple times.
Good. Any other questions?
Mayor,
Mr. Vesey?
quick question, just as an aside. If there's any cost involved, I see little signs on some of our bus shelters maintained by Franklin Township. If there's any cost relevant to that, does that come out of this budget?
yes.
Okay.
Street signs come out of this budget,
And,
and that would be a street sign.
Talking about the bus shelters
Yes.
themselves.
Yeah.
That's where it gets budgeted.
okay, out of this line item here. Thank you.
Any other questions for this section?
Okay. Next budget, and you're just following the tabs, is the snow removal.
And the snow removal budget was held the same as the 2015. 2015, if you remember, we had to put extra money in. That came out of the trust from the snow.
So what's our trust balance now?
Trust balance is...
$433,894 as of November.
Bring it on.
Any other questions?
Just FYI, at the end of the year, we were able to move 50,000 that we had saved in the Condominium Act back into the trust to reestablish it at the 483 that it was at the beginning of the year. So we needed to put it towards the snow budget, but we took it back out of the Condo Services Act, which is basically like 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. So the trust is back up to the 483 that we started the year with.
And where would you find that figure in this book?
It's right at the bottom of the, so under snow, it's at the bottom
The
of
483?
that page.
The 12/31/2014 figure? What was the figure you quoted? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
that 12/31/14 is the number now that
It's the
it's been
trust.
restored to.
Okay.
On 11/15, it was at 433. The $50,000 has been put back to make it 483 again.
Okay.
Got it.
Other questions? I'm occasionally asked, how much does it cost to plow our snow per inch of snow? Is that a reasonable figure?
No.
Okay. It depends.
Every storm is different.
Okay.
If you just get an inch of snow, you don't plow.
Okay. Enough said. Thank you.
Okay. The next budget tab is titled Waste, and it's not necessarily waste.
We budget for waste?
We budget for waste. Sanitation, I guess, is the more appropriate title of this.
Do we budget for fraud and abuse as well?
Shh, the lawyer's not here. Sanitation is primarily our recycling costs. As you can see, there is $688,000 budgeted for Somerset Recycling Services. That's the amount that Somerset County charges us to provide recycling services. The other contractual of $75,000 is for our garbage to get picked up, all of the garbage container services for all of our buildings. And this shows an increase of $100,000, doesn't it? No, I'm sorry, it shows it flat, 673. I'm sorry, I was looking at the actual, which was 930.15. So this budget has remained the same. This also shows an application of $100,000 for our tonnage grant. I believe that will go down next year, but we can do one more year of $100,000.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
I said the $100,000 tonnage grant is the application of a fund balance in a line of the budget that we split over 3 years. So that $100,000 is applied this year, but that $100,000 won't be applied next year. It'll be a lesser number.
We can't apply for another grant?
Oh, no, we get that grant annually, but we don't get $300,000. We found $300,000 3 years ago.
Oh.
That had been unexpended. It was the decision back then that we made, all of us as a group, was that we would split it over 3 years.
Okay.
This is
I
year
kinda
3.
remember
This
that,
is
yeah.
year 3 of that 3-year plan for that $300,000 that was in the reserve for this particular grant.
So we will get a grant, but not for $100,000.
Almost $52,000 is what the current grant is, so that'll be about that number that gets applied next year. But so enjoy it while we can. We got one more year of $100,000 out of it. Okay, that's kind of a boring line. That kind of not much to talk about. So shall we move to buildings and grounds?
Yes, please.
Okay. Buildings and Grounds has a $228,825 budget proposed for an increase of $80 over the previous year. So I'll let the gentleman to my left explain to you why it increased $80. What's the percentage on that one? It doesn't even give it. I don't know if percentages go that low.
0.0 something percent. It's an $80 increase.
Let's move on.
Okay.
Do we buy what are known as green building supplies, cleaning agents and so forth?
Some of them, when they're available through Home Depot or Grainger, yes.
I'm thinking sustainable Jersey thoughts, that's all.
Next tab is vehicle maintenance. Vehicle maintenance is proposed at $146,000, which is an increase of $1,500 over the previous year. Increases primarily in motor vehicle parts and accessories, $2,000.
Aging fleet,
And
some of the, yeah.
parts are going up in price, cost of parts. $1,500.
Does this budget include the budget for Board of Education vehicles as well?
No.
No, that's what that's a separate line, right? That's what I thought. Right.
That's a straight pass.
Okay, any questions?
No, I just remember this used to be a line item we used to talk a lot about.
It was.
It's getting better.
And as you say, it's pretty much held its own, and actually not only has it held its own, but the spending has seemed to come under control
down,
from
yes.
previous years, if you look at previous years' actual spending.
I agree.
Mayor?
Mr. Vestner?
Is any of that, you think, a positive benefit from you're putting the new hirees in with, I forget their exact, but we put those mechanics so we can really bring up.
That's
the
part of it,
power
because they're able to
repair
get
service.
more of the PM, the preventive maintenance done, so they're catching things earlier. The other thing that's happening is the reinvestment into the fleet, buying the newer vehicles, getting the older vehicles off the road that were parts hogs. I mean,
Right.
they were just sucking us dry on the parts. So getting the newer vehicles in has a reaction here.
We can pat ourselves on the back on this one. We're doing better. Right, Mayor?
Yep. I voted against it. Shame on me. Okay.
Okay, there is one other line that we'll do with Public Works and Tom, and that's utilities. Do that one. This one shouldn't take very long. I know we have some other, at the end, after capital, we have all other lines, but I just kind of, so a lot of our, so utilities, if you look, is a budget that's proposed at $2,485,000, which is a decrease of $262,000 over 2015. That's why I'm kind of bringing that to, and Tom didn't know I was going to do this, and neither did Carl. But we have some cost savings here. You see fuel costs. The department request is down $178,000. Obviously, the bulk of that is due to the decrease in fuel costs overall, and the fact that we've seen a decrease in our fuel costs, and and also just efficiencies in our utilities costs. Our electric
The solar panels that are helping.
Well, I'd like to think that some of the things, and you know, so Councilman Chase brought up the green team, which we have a meeting tomorrow, Sustainable Jersey, but our utility costs continue to decrease, and it's not because utility costs are decreasing. It's that we have put in energy efficient lighting. Last year, we had in our capital 2015 budget, projects in the senior recreation and the community center that were energy efficient, public
Right,
works
public works,
building. So those projects that you saw in those capital budgets in previous years have a lasting effect, and those were primarily at the request of our public works department and our engineering department. So I just, $262,000 decrease in the budget there is a significant number.
It sure is.
So I just think that it was worthy of bringing to your attention now, rather than after they walk out of the room when they're done with their capital budgets and want nothing more than to get out of here. So that's the utility budget. We'll talk about all the other lines after they leave.
Question about utility. So I will note that of the $200.5 million, about 1.3 million, roughly half of it, is for street lighting. Is that right? Yep.
Yes, that's correct.
And Councilman Chase has been talking about switching over to LED lighting, so there's significant money that could be saved there, and that's a project we need to look at in the future. Go ahead.
I agree completely. The lighting is better with LED. We just have to get public service on board.
Yep.
Because that's, and for anyone who's not aware, the township pays all the costs associated with lighting those lights up, but it's public service that installs the lights, not us. So we're kind of at their mercy, so to speak, in what types of lights they install. So I couldn't agree more with you than the fact that those lights are much better.
That's an insurmountable project. We've been trying to get streetlights replaced on Hamilton Street, and it's taken an act of God.
I know you've seen those of you on the Hamilton Street Advisory Board have seen the hurdles necessary to get over just to get a street light put in sometimes. And it's not like we don't pay for it. We do.
Right.
So.
Well, that's an area where we may be able to speak to our state legislatures.
Yes.
And move that along. Go on.
Okay, that's it for Public Works. We can certainly bring up open space next, and then we'll go to capital with everyone that's left over, which is these two gentlemen and Alice and Fran as well. But Fran, you want to come up?
Thank you, gentlemen.
Ms.
evening.
Maricali.
Hi.
Hi.
It is under the title, under the tab called Trust in your books. Second to last tab in the book, titled Trust. So, as much as some in the finance world would hate that I say this, Andy, you can put your fingers in your ears. The open space budget, it is maybe just a slight misnomer. It's more of an open space spending plan. This is out of a dedicated trust. We're required to prepare a budget. It's a little bit different than a municipal budget because no matter how this budget plays out, it doesn't affect anything as far as it is a dedicated tax and it is a certain percentage and the same amount is taxed every year regardless of what is on this piece of paper. This piece of paper reflects not only the amount of money that is spent to maintain all of our open space and recreational properties, but also the potential for acquisition or construction costs that might be associated with the development of parks, as well as the improvements that are of a capital nature on our existing parks. So when you see numbers like exist at the very bottom where it says open space and farmland at $14,443,000, those are cost estimates based on potential acquisitions that we may have in the calendar year of 2016. There's nothing that says that we will have them or won't have them. It's all more or less speculation at this point. Some of them are in various stages of negotiation, so we don't necessarily speak about them until we're done with those negotiations. As you all in council know, that those are things that we discuss in executive session until such time as the negotiations are complete and offers of sale and purchase are made. This particular budget, like I said, includes a number that is much higher than in the previous year, and that's because we have some properties that we may be buying this year. We hope to buy this year, and we won't know, and when we do, there'll be an ordinance that says we're buying them. So I want to bring that up because that number looks much bigger than it has in previous years. So the general OE budget for this year also reflects an increase of about $355,000. The bulk of that increase due to the fact that there's a 5% of the capital budget is budgeted in the OE budget as a cash portion of any capital project. So that cash line for the reserve for the capital improvement fund is an increase of $690,000 over the previous year's budget. So that would explain why there's a budget increase of 355, really meaning there's a net decrease in that particular portion of this budget. I know that sounds like double talk, but when one thing goes up a lot and the rest go down, we still see an increase, but just not as much.
I was going to ask what the difference was between reserve for future use and capital improvement fund. So if you're putting it into capital improvement fund as the 5%, does that imply that we would issue bonds for the bulk?
Doesn't
of our
have
major
to.
purchases?
It could mean that. It doesn't necessarily mean that because we don't know. So maybe. And that's the best I can answer, Councilman, in that until such time as we work out the details of an acquisition, and then council has an opportunity to consider the methods of funding, I won't know the answer. So we budget at the full 5% as if we were going to bond for everything. And in the event that we don't, the difference between budget in a trust and budget in a municipal budget is that the money just simply returns to the trust and is there to reuse in the following year, as opposed to money that doesn't get spent. It's not like we save it for the next year and then we can budget less in the next year. It's just, I don't know and I won't know until such time as the deal is done and we make a determination based on consideration by council as to the method of funding, be it a cash acquisition or a bonded acquisition.
Is it okay if I answer the second part of Councilman Chase's question? In the last couple of years, you referenced the reserve for future use. That's a mathematical calculation. So when we calculate what the 5 cents tax for open spaces and subtract the other operating expenses, including capital improvement, the balance goes in the reserve for future use.
Yeah,
This
that's
year,
what I
we
would figure
expect
for
the
that.
spending to be above what the tax is because we'll take some of the money out of the reserve that we previously put in. So that was a mathematical figure, but this year we expect the spending to be above what the tax collected just for this year is.
You all good with that?
Other questions for open space? So I have a question. I called Carl up. How many full-time employee equivalents from Public Works are spending their time on open space?
So your question is, what is the equivalent full-time employees working on open space out of the open space budget annually?
Yes. And if that's a hard question.
No, it's not hard. I mean, I don't know that you needed Carl. I appreciate, my math skills are pretty good. The salaries part-time, which are not related to full-time employees, is $55,000. Those are our seasonal employees.
Okay.
So they work 3 months, and there's 4 of them, so that's the equivalent of 1. Okay. And then there's $25,000 in overtime, which is the equivalent about half. So 1.5 laborers, $25,000.
But we're using our employees more than that to mow lawns and et cetera.
Well, you're talking about parks. We don't, they're not funded out of open space. All right, this is what is funded in salaries out of open space, and that's strictly related to open space maintenance. I'm splitting hairs here. I'm talking about preserved open space versus active recreation facilities.
Right.
We don't use the open space trust to pay for the maintenance of our parks from a labor standpoint.
Now, I thought last year we had discussed that, and we had said, no, we should do that, but there was a discussion about whether we would pay their pension and health benefits out of open space.
And you know what? And I'm going to stand corrected. You did. That's way down on the line, isn't it?
Okay.
It's 2. There's 2 for that. Yes.
Is that,
Two laborers, and then the others that I said.
do you think that's reasonable? Do you think 2 laborers are all that it takes to maintain our parks?
Our parks?
Yeah.
No.
So,
So to further that, I mean, I could sort of give you, so the answer, and I'm going to ask him what the answer to this question is, so that generally speaking, we have a foreman and a certain number of truck drivers, laborers, equipment operators that work in our parks. We no longer have a parks department like we used to years ago, but we certainly have employees that are dedicated to park maintenance. How many are there, Carl?
There are 10.
So there are 10. That from,
So I know this will be controversial, but one could argue that if we build a park, we have to maintain a park, and if we build a park, the cost to maintain that park should come out of our open space, recreation, historic, and farmland preservation trust fund.
your manager made that argument a couple of years ago, but, so I won't argue with you.
Right, so I'm, and council had a position, and I actually don't even remember my position on that. But, that might be something we want to reconsider. I'm not gonna hold council I'm not gonna ask for a vote here, but that's something that we may want to consider. We've still got another financial oversight meeting before we introduce the budget. But perhaps you should be able to prepare a number for us. And I welcome anyone to differ with me on this. Pension money there's nothing dirty about pension money. There's nothing dirty about healthcare money. In my opinion, it is reasonable to consider paying, if I've got someone spending all of his time on parks, and no one spends all their time on parks, we share back and forth, et cetera, but the equivalent, and that's why I used the word equivalent before, then the cost of maintaining that park includes their health care and includes their pension. And, I think one needs to consider this when we build a park. And, I know there were people in town this year who didn't want us to build parks. But if you can't afford to maintain the park, then maybe we shouldn't build the park. And I'm not suggesting that. But the point I'm making is I would like council to consider, and we can consider it in financial oversight, is should more money come out of open space for the maintenance of our parks? That's where I'm going.
I think so, yes.
Mayor?
And
Oh.
people may differ.
So,
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Sir.
the Branstad Carroll recommendation was that we do have an inventory of existing parks that we need to maintain. That was the first recommendation. So to me, it's something very logical that we have to preserve what we have and then build on it. So from that perspective, I think the open space fund should actually pay more of the cost than we have been.
Anyone else?
Well, I think the people out there think that the Open Space Trust Fund is for open space, and they see it being more and more diverted to what might be considered to be ordinary expenses of the township. And I've certainly gotten messages complaining about this, and Fran is nodding her head that she hears this too. So I tend to argue to maintain the Open Space Trust Fund for open space. We're using it for development of active recreation on township-owned land, but I think that to be putting sort of ordinary salaries of part of DPW employees on it is going a good bit farther. And I would prefer to not take that step.
Anyone else?
Carl?
Carl and I.
Oh, I was just going to echo what Councilman Chase said. If we keep putting more and more salaries into the Open Space Trust Fund, or putting more on the Open Space Trust Fund, then that means that there's less money to buy land with. So, or put parks on it or do whatever else we need. But I don't think we should put salaries or ordinary things in the Open Space Trust budget, because it doesn't belong there, in my opinion.
Anyone else?
So,
Go ahead.
so historically, what Councilman Chase, Deputy Mayor Chase, and Councilman Wright, I think that is the mindset. And I could understand how people would feel that, may think that it's not even legal to. So I'm very sensitive to that. But on the other hand, you have laws that were put in the state, and then the county, I believe, had a referendum X years ago, or maybe that's just how they were using theirs, but broadening the scope of how open space legally can be used and how it's starting to trend to be used. So I'm not going to go through the whole history of it, but I think we have to bring the information to the public objectively this year and understand not just what some people may pass along or what some council people feel, which is all important, but I think this is a long overdue discussion that needs a component of education and details of what we can do legally. There's the open space tax, a lot of people believe was a temporary, and you can raise and lower the amount per penny, per assessed $100. So there's all kinds of ways this conversation could go, and this isn't time and place for it, but I'd like to see our parks, and they're out there spreading in terrible weather and mosquitoes, so I I congratulate all PW people who are out there working their tails off, especially in the summer months. But I'd like to see our parks maintained better. There's certain situations that are subpar. And again, don't blame our workers, but whatever we're going to do, we have to look at the big picture, get a standard of maintenance that we could achieve, and hopefully bring that standard up, and make a decision as to what direction we're going in, because there's logic to all directions. But right now, it's very muddled. So I know that doesn't answer anybody's question, but I think we're going to have to delve into that this year deeply.
Councilwoman Francois.
Well, my mind was made up a while ago. I think as we acquire open space for active recreation, we should be maintaining that space with open space trust money. And I'm not going to go any further than that. I think it's legal. I don't think it's illegal. I think it's a policy decision that we have the right to make, and we should continue to move forward thinking about what's best for the township. We've been saying if you build it, they will come. They're coming, they're using the parks, we have to keep them maintained.
Councilwoman Sherman, you're the only one who...
Yeah, I basically, my first question was it legal? Obviously, it's legal, and if it's legal, it's something we have the right to consider, and if it's something that makes for better parks, and it is something we can utilize, I have no problem with utilizing the funds for that.
Mr. Mayor?
Councilman Prasad.
It is an abbreviation. It is the Open Space, Active Recreation, and Historic Preservation Trust Fund, and not just the Open Space Trust Fund, and that is where the misunderstanding comes from. So if it is meant for active recreation and historic preservation, then those things should be considered as part of the charter of the trust fund. That's all. Thank you.
Okay. I think we've had a healthy discussion on it, a respectful discussion. I always appreciate that.
So we'll have all of the numbers for your financial oversight meeting on Monday. I've already discussed it with my public works manager. It'll be
You are an
done.
efficient manager.
There you go.
Excellent.
Yeah, that's easily done.
Anything else in open space?
I think that's it for open space. The only, I mean, as long as we're understanding of the numbers in the capital portion, that was my biggest concern, and I think everyone is of that understanding now. So, if you have no other questions of Ms. Varicali.
And you know, this is a council that believes in open government, that this coming Tuesday, we will be introducing the budget. And that
Sure
would
hope
be-
so.
That would be an excellent time for people to come out in public discussion and weigh in on their feelings about.
And there'll also be a
that.
public hearing for that budget as
Right.
well.
Yep, so that'd be a great time, and I welcome their comments. That's what what public discussion is for. Thank you, Ms. Varicali. And by the way, thank you in general for what you do. You do a great job. So, I guess it looks like we're ready to go on to capital.
Capital, yes. And actually, and I'm going to bring up Tom, and certainly Justin is welcome to come up, but what we really should do before we get to capital, and since we have Tom and Carl still up here, is we should do the water utility budget, which is under the water tab, which we skipped when these two gentlemen to my left and right were here earlier. And while, not that I wasn't paying attention to the open space conversation, because I jumped ahead to just get a sneak peek at our water utility budget, so I could tell you that our water utility budget, as you can imagine, the primary, the largest cost in our water budget is water, because we are a purchasing utility. We don't, as they say, create water. We distribute water that we purchase from suppliers. The overall budget is proposed this year at $10,953,984. That's an increase of $259,000 over the previous year's budget. Of that 259, 67,500 is the increase in our water costs. Both the New Jersey American and New Brunswick, which are our primary sources of water, have provided us with their rate increases for the year. Both had rate increases into 2016, so we see an increase of that 67.5, and the other increase, ironically on the tails of our discussion about employees in open space, is a $195,000 increase in the medical insurance for those employees who work in the water utility. So that's an increase of about $265,000, and the overall increase is $259,000. So you can see that that's the bulk of our increases in the water utility, our health insurance for our employees and the cost of purchasing the water itself. Otherwise, the costs have relatively stayed the same as far as running of the utility.
So the other health insurance costs that we had quoted before don't include these
So
health insurance
our employees in the water utility are fully funded out of the water utility. So that $195,000 is the increase. You see, it's $850,000 overall.
Yeah.
Health insurance is budgeted out of water for water utility workers. So the answer is yes. It does not it's not included in that number previously.
Okay.
Now, we were talking about an ordinance to pass on automatically
Yes.
the cost of any increases in the cost of water we purchased. Did we complete and pass that?
We have not passed that ordinance. That ordinance is in draft form, ready to be considered in final. You have it all done, and our Public Works Committee meeting, which will be the fourth Tuesday of this month at 5 o'clock. Is that 5:30? What did we say? 5 o'clock, Jim? I don't know.
Yes.
5 o'clock. 5 o'clock before the council meeting, before our next council meeting. Not this one coming up, the one following, right? Yes.
I believe so.
Second meeting of November.
November.
February. Yeah, February. Yeah, I'm jumping ahead. Yeah, I'm
Timeline.
doing math in my head here, and I can't get the month right. Yes, the second meeting of February at 5 p.m.
That, just, we don't have to go into details of that, but there was two different possible funding components. This is just specifically the increase in our specific cost per gallon. Doesn't have anything to do with any other funds or maintenance or
correct.
upgrades. Because I know we were discussing different ideas.
There's two
and there were some
different things.
changes.
Yes, there's two different
So I
things.
just want to be clear.
Both of them are prepared to show to the Public Works Committee. There's two types of automatic rate increases that we discussed. One is an automatic rate increase, and then there's another that is related to capital costs. Both of those we're prepared to discuss at the next Public Works Committee meeting.
And we've saved substantially through our leak detection program, right?
Yes, we
How
have.
much per year would you say we've saved in water that we buy but don't sell?
We haven't run the numbers for last year in full. At one point, I think back in July, the last time the numbers were run, it was about a 15% reduction in our unaccounted for. So that was 15% of what we were buying was not being lost.
Well,
So do the math
that's
for me.
substantial,
15% of our water bill.
of $7 million.
Yeah. So, of course, it's a little harder because some of it comes, we buy water at
We
different
buy
prices.
water from different places at different prices.
It has to have a
It's-
weighted average, and depends, and again, it also depends on how good we are at turning on and off the valve, and I'm really dumbing it down right there, and I know that. But if we hit the number every day with New Jersey American, that's a wonderful thing. Sometimes we exceed that number because we have a mandatory minimum daily. So we want to try to hit that number because our other supplier is less than New Jersey American. So, but it's all about balance, and I only bring that up because part of our capital expenditures that we're in the midst of has to do with just that. It's the upgrading of all of our systems to allow us to be much better at that than we are right now.
So you're going to automate it?
Well, and that's the SCADA system, and it's so that we have a better understanding of how much water is flowing through real time so that we can better balance the system and allow for us to purchase more from New Brunswick and less from New Jersey American when the system itself allows us to do that.
Right, so basically to recap, from American, there's a minimum we pay.
4 million gallons a day.
Right, and if we use less than that, we're still paying.
We're still paying 4 million
So
gallons a
obviously, we
day.
want to use that, but then as soon as we've used that, we want to start using it from different sources, and we are spending money for a system that will do that.
Yes.
Automatically, and it's not a cheap system, but it will save us money in the long
Yes, exactly.
And of course, if we can ever hook up the Little Rocky Hill water main to the township supply, we will stop buying at top price.
The most
from
expensive
South
water that we buy from South Brunswick, yes. Yes.
But we make it up in volume.
So are there any other questions on the
I
water
have
utility?
one more question. How many water employees do we have? Because if I look at the engineering DPW, I see 5
If you look
water
at,
maintenance
you should
workers.
have been given a water utility. So what you're going to look at here is
Where is it?
on the,
Yes, that's.
there's
what I'm
one that's
looking at.
called water utility. All right, and if you look over towards the right of that page, it says allocation 100% water. It's
Okay.
in gray.
I see that.
It says allocation. Those are the full-time water utility workers. We allocate salary of other employees, like in the collector's office, there's salary allocated. Portion of my salary is allocated as the township manager and the overseer of the water utility. A portion of my salary is allocated to water. But the 100% allocations are that column on the left. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 with the vacancy. Right? Did I count right? 15?
16.
16? Okay, 16 with the vacancy.
So that $850,000 represents those 16 employees, medical.
For
insurance.
healthcare, that's absolutely correct, yes.
When it snows, do our water utility people plow?
They sure do.
Maybe a little controversial, but when it snows, do our sewage authority
Yeah.
people plow?
Not for us. They're not, so let me not correct you, but they're not ours.
No, I know that.
So
but-
do the sewage authority employees plow? They do, so there's certainly, you will see their trucks, who are not employees of the Township of Franklin, out with plows on. They plow things like their pump stations and their parking lot and the like.
But they're not involved with our street.
They are not, no, and they are not our employees. That's
They
the
are not.
primary reason why.
I use the word our.
I understood, I know, I just don't want to confuse in that they really are not ours, and that's a frequently confused thing.
on.
Okay.
I just had one question, Mayor. Mrs. Elnick, just in general, where would you say we're at now as far as, we had some major water line breaks, we had other than the unique situation on 27 that we've been dealing with, the water pressure and whatnot, how would you grade our system overall? As far as major maintenance, major repairs, anything could happen at any minute, but where are we at after the several years of upgrades?
I would say we're, a solid B, up to, heading up to a B plus. A lot of the things that we're doing on the preventive side is, working to get that grade higher and higher. We're finding the issues before they come up, so they're not happening during an emergency situation. You're going to have main breaks all the time, regardless of how your system is. A lot of that has to do with environmental reasons. If you have a cold spell coming after a hot spell, you're going to get main breaks, things like that. But for the most part, I think, the overtime is going down every year, which is a sign that the system is getting healthier.
Okay. So can we move on to capital?
So how would you like to do this, Mr. Mayor? You want to break it down? You want to go line by line on this? And
I want to know what we're buying. I guess break it down.
You going line by line? Excuse me, Mr. Mayor, did you say line by line?
I said the easiest way for us is going to be in order that it's in the book.
And that's what I intended to do. Do you want me to go line by line for each vehicle? That's, we have two vehicles requested by construction.
Yeah, why don't we do that?
Okay.
But that's not for everything, correct?
Yeah, it sounds like it's for everything. I mean, there's,
No. What I'm asking you is, we're taking vehicles as a lump sum, correct?
No, first we're doing construction, then we're doing police, then public works.
Okay.
If you don't mind, just let me explain something too. When you get to the capital section, because each of these gentlemen will be describing the purchase, it goes straight down as when they get to their section, including open space and water. The first two pages summarize the township, and behind that, as they go through their capital request, they can go all the way down. But if you go back to the last page in water and the last page in open space, you'll see a summary chart for each of those put in water and open space also. But the detail is all in this last tab to make it easier for you to evaluate.
Okay.
And how is that different than what was in our packet tonight?
there were a couple items added to the capital list.
Tonight, we're going to go over those too, or?
They're on the list, so we can certainly go over them. There's one in particular that you and I discussed earlier today.
Okay.
I have a question, and this is really about how things are presented. I was looking at the third page here, vehicles, and down at the bottom, first there's a total for vehicles, and then there's 5% down payment if bonded, and then total vehicles capital if bonded. I would have thought that the 5% would come out of the total. It
No.
would be part of the total, not added on to the total.
Mike, please.
Mike.
Mike, please.
No,
That's not how the calculations work. It's actually 5% of the total, including the 5%. So when you do the math, it's 1.05%. And I had to put that in because we're not sure at this point how much will be cash capital and how much will be bonded. Anything that's cash capital, that 5% will go down.
I just always thought that if we had to put down 5%,
And it was
towards
5%.
bonds, that would reduce the total of bonds that we had to sell.
Ultimately, it does.
it's not.
But of course, it would be a this year's expense as opposed to many years'
God bless you.
expense, so I can see why you put it in.
Right.
But I just want to be clear as to whether it's an added expense or.
It's not, so, right, it's when you do the 5%, it's not taking it off the top. It's added to the top, which seems to like fly in the face of logic. I agree, and actually, I asked the same question when I was a little fuzzy this afternoon with the CFO.
So what would be the total cost if not bonded?
$591,316.
So the 5% includes interest?
The 5% is what gets budgeted into the OE budget. It's the cash. I mean, I'm not, so that's what gets put in.
Okay. But we don't bond for police vehicles?
No, not true. We don't budget for police cars.
Bond?
Bond. We don't bond for police cars,
but
not police vehicles. SUVs, bond, yes. Patrol cars, no. Useful life is less than 5 years.
That's why the 2 Chevy Impalas were in the police OE budget, and you will not see them in the capital budget.
Got it.
Obviously, when we do the budget, the next hearing to introduce the budget, will adjust based on the decisions of how much cash capital and how much gets bonded. We'll adjust these figures so that they tie into exactly what the decisions are made.
Got it.
Okay? So,
And the construction vehicles, those come basically out of construction's budget because construction raises more money than we know how to spend.
they don't, that's not, it's, no. The answer to that question is no. Our construction budget is simply a component of our budget. There is no separate construction budget. It is just a component of the municipal budget. All right. And while they certainly are a revenue-producing department within the town, and there are certain DCA requirements as far as the construction code budget is concerned, it is just part of the general budget. It is not separate. It is not a part, we need to not be confused by that. They are just a component of our budget.
Well, that's,
Insist all you want about us not being confused.
I understand that I have a construction official who sometimes might muddy the waters here. His budget is just simply a component of our budget, and it is part of our regular budget. And the money that is used to pay for anything related to his operation comes from our general budget.
Okay.
but isn't it true that the DCA requires us to spend at least 85% of what they take in on their expenses?
There is a portion of his budget that is calculated, his budget is not calculated on that. The DCA requires us to show that there is a portion of his revenue is then spent on his department, yes, but that has nothing to do with our budget. It just simply has to do with the amount of money, and his calculations are done for the DCA separate and apart from our budget process. The total cost to fund the construction code office, and I mean total amount, is calculated per the DCA formulas that he's required to do.
Well, would these vehicles go into that calculation?
Absolutely. They will.
Their expense?
Right, but it's still part of our budget, not his budget. His calculations include things like the heating costs and air conditioning costs, all the utility costs, rent. They actually have a formula for rent based on square footage of his office space within the municipal complex. Obviously, we don't budget that way. His budget, and I don't want to confuse tonight's proceedings with that. That's a totally separate and apart from our normal budgeting process.
Okay.
So, the Construction Code Office has requested 2 pickup trucks for a total cost of $60,000, $30,000 apiece. The police department has requested 4 sport utility vehicles, 4 police interceptor models, and 1 Ford Expedition with the related equipment that goes with those patrol vehicles.
So,
Yes.
any questions there? If not, I have a question.
Sure.
I think we discussed it in financial oversight, but it's slipping my mind. That's 7 vehicles, yet we're requesting 10 tough books for new vehicles. Is that just so we have spares, or?
This is to replace ones that are in need of replacement. Just, it's 10 of them, but we replaced 10
Yeah, I think we discussed.
that are obsolete now.
Okay.
Correct. And that's why there's 7 radios but 10 computers.
Okay, go on.
Okay. In the Public Works Department, we're requesting 2 replacement bodies for Sterling dump trucks. These are the large dump trucks. That's probably worthy of some discussion when we get to the end of this. A Mason dump with plow and a pickup truck with plow. And that is it for 2016 in the Public Works Department.
Any questions there? So, pardon? Oh,
I just wondered, I don't see what he's talking about. Am I on the wrong page?
We're under the.
Okay, I got it.
You got it?
The Mason dump with plows, are those 4-wheel drive?
Yes.
Because you very wisely put me, when I was out in plowing, in a 2-wheel drive truck to teach me a lesson about that we don't want 2-wheel drive trucks.
That was a larger vehicle, similar to a Sterling, not a Mason dump, which is a little bit smaller than what you were in.
So are the ones that we are buying that may be doing some plowing, obviously not necessarily the pickup, but are these 4-wheel drive, or are they 2-wheel? Are some of them 2-wheel
We have a handful of 2-wheel drive vehicles, yes.
that we're buying, though?
Nothing that we're buying, everything's going to be 4-wheel drive,
Okay, even-
Right, you're only buying
even the
2
pickup?
vehicles there.
even the pickups.
Right, okay.
So, and just at a point of reference, like I said, Mr. Mayor, there's only 2 vehicles listed there, and that's why I kind of brought to the attention the Sterling body replacements. And perhaps you might recall the conversation that we had in
Right.
financial oversight. These are vehicles that were purchased back in, I think, 2003. And they're the large dump trucks that we have in the fleet. And the beds have rotted away due to the salt spreaders over the years. They're 13 years old now. And this is the replacement of the beds because the
Right.
vehicle chassis are still in good condition, so we can make use of the vehicle itself, but just replace the dump beds.
Yes.
So much more cost-efficient way of getting a newer vehicle in the fleet.
Very artful.
Thank you for reminding me. Okay,
And that's the request for vehicles. So are there any other questions about vehicles? Justin, if you don't mind, I'm going to jump around a little bit and just ask everyone to flip the page here to the capital non-vehicles. Should be page 2 of the capital requests. Okay. So the request for the community center is upgrades to the fire sprinkler system, which will be phase 2 of a 2-phase project. This was a project that was mandated by really the fire code now, and the fact that we need to bring our fire sprinkler system.
Also recalled heads.
Right, factory recalled heads. Bathroom and kitchen upgrades and improvements for $30,000. Carpet replacement, and I think, what's that, 3 of the rooms?
Correct, Ed.
3 rooms in the senior center for a cost of $25,000. An HVAC management system, which would better allow us to control the HVAC system in that building. In fact, it lacks one completely now, and obviously would make the building much more cost efficient from a heating and air conditioning point of view if we had a method to control it. And then a portable sound system for township events. This was through the Recreation Department. This would be a portable public address system that could be used at township events, including the fireworks and what have you. So those are the community center requests.
Questions? Okay.
Okay. Alice, you can go home. The engineering requests for 2016 are $2.5 million for the road resurfacing program, $750,000 for the Board of Ed sidewalk improvements, and $975,000 for the Phillips Road ravine restoration. Are we all familiar with those three particular projects?
Got a question for you.
Sure.
Those particular processes. Down there for sidewalk improvements. I have a question.
Sure.
Last year, there was appropriated $750,000, of which I believe $250,000 was for engineering or something of that nature for the sidewalks, and that left $500,000. Now, from what I understand, because we would take money from our surplus to use and then bond or raise through taxes, however you want to put it, to float that $500,000 or $750,000. Now, my question one is, what happened?
All right, so I'm not quite sure where the information is coming from, Councilman, about the $250,000. There was not $250,000 spent on sidewalks. There was no money spent on sidewalks.
So there was no engineering done, zero?
No, we have an engineering proposal, and that's where it stopped.
Okay,
So the question is, where did the money go? And what I'll say is, the money was never there. As is the case with all capital projects, there is a thing called a capital plan. And that's what we talk about right now, is we have this capital plan. Unless that money is encumbered via a capital ordinance, be it a cash capital ordinance or a bond ordinance, that money is just, it's there just as a figure on a piece of paper. It's not until an ordinance is adopted by council that that money becomes real, for lack of a better term.
So what you're saying is, basically, I missed the boat last year because we didn't do anything on that? Is that what you're saying?
What we did was got a proposal for sidewalks, and then there was no further action taken by council, correct?
Okay, so I just wanted to make sure that's where we're at on that little spot.
So that's
Now,
where we're at.
Moving on to something else there.
Okay.
Being that we didn't do anything last year.
Okay.
Now, there's a couple projects that come up with sidewalk improvements that we want to talk about with the BOE. So because we never moved on that 750, I believe either some people up here thought about that we did do something with that 750, or I might be mistaken, but that's where the thought came from. So I had sent you an email because I wanted to find out some information.
Mm-hmm.
If we were to go out today, say the whole project cost $1 million.
All right, well, this is where we and I want some clarification because, I did.
No, if you excuse me, just
okay, there's two lists, so I just need to know which one.
Just hold on, I got to do this in order. If we went out and said, well, we have $1 million worth of sidewalks in town, and instead of paying $100,000 a year to do whatever $100,000 a year would do for sidewalks, would it work better if we went out and bonded, because the money is cheap right now, for that $1 million, and because it's a capital improvement or something of that nature, and the sidewalks would last 15 to 20 years, could we not spread that over that time frame, or am I missing something there?
So, one, I don't think that it would be cheaper for us to bond for everything and then not be able to do the work for several years. So,
Why would it be several years?
Well, because there's currently probably about $3.5 to $4 million worth of sidewalks that need to be done.
Uh-huh.
We're not equipped from a staff point of view, to handle that amount of sidewalk work, plus $2.5 million worth of road overlay work, the inspections and all of the things required, just would be, we talked about the $750,000 because it was a number that we felt that we could handle based on current manpower in our engineering department, and the number of inspectors that we have, and so that number was, for last year, would have enabled us to do what we identified as the four top streets on the list that had been worked on both by the Township and the Board of Education going back many years ago.
Right.
All right.
Go ahead.
And that's why I said that the list is a two-part list. There was one list of streets that had no sidewalks, where it was identified by that joint effort between the Township's Police Department and the Board of Education Transportation Department several years ago. That was that was targeting the middle school, which had the highest number of walkers within the Board of Education's student population. And then taking that one step further, all of the schools were looked at, minus the newest school that's just on the drawing board right now. But all the way down to Franklin Park, all of the schools were looked at, and streets were identified for all of the schools where they could benefit from a safety standpoint by sidewalks. So I have those two lists. That's why I just keep saying there's two lists. The first list is just those schools that were identified around the streets, around the middle school.
Right.
And then it went out from there and encompassed all of the other ones. Yeah, because you pick up schools as you go further away from the middle school. You pick up Pine Grove, and so out off of Pine Grovers, and then you pick up McAfee and Connerly all the way out to JFK Boulevard. So we certainly have those lists. We've updated those lists for current costs because those lists have existed for a long time now, and the cost to install sidewalks has increased. But it's not practical for us to do them all in 1 year.
Understandable.
So that's why we were breaking them down. And that $750,000 number wasn't just arrived at last year by just randomly picking a number. It was arrived at by saying, all right, we can do this many linear feet of sidewalk in a year and be able to do it with the staff that we have. And that was about 14,000 linear feet, give or take, is what we came up with. And those were the four streets that we identified that were on that list.
So basically, and I'm going to blame myself on this one, I got snookered because I thought that we had put in the $750,000 in our budget last year, and for some reason I thought, I'm going to say it this way, I thought that's what we did. Now, I'm looking down at this end because I want to make sure all my council members see my face when I do this. So I'm kind of upset about some things because I guess through our finance committee or something like that, they come up again with that $750,000. And I keep saying to myself, well, gee, because of some things that we went down the road with last year, now all of a sudden I'm back to 750 when I thought it was 1.25 million. Now, maybe I missed the boat on something, but we need to change that number. And if that number isn't changed, then we got problems here. Not with you, understandable, not with you, but with our fellow council members, because that's not what was understood. That's not what was agreed upon here on this dais, out in front of the public. So I think we got a problem here. Now, sometimes they say get along to go along, or however that saying goes, but nah, not tonight. If we have to sit here and have a long discussion, we will have a long discussion. But I need to understand some things. My constituents need to understand some things. And I should say, put it this way, the residents of the Fourth Ward need to understand some things. The school board needs to understand some things. And I need to understand some things, but most importantly, our children need to understand some things, just how we do business up here in Franklin Township. Now, could someone explain to me how we missed $750,000 and how we thought that engineering, construction, or whatever pre-planning was $250 and that left $500,000 in the tank and nothing happened? So I'd like to ask our mayor if he would like to explain it, or anybody else up here that would care to enlighten me, please do.
Anyone like to speak?
I'm sorry?
I'm not speaking to you, Mr. Wright. I'm asking the others if anyone would like to speak.
I'll jump in, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you.
Okay, so the municipal budgeting process,
I understand all that because you told me that on the phone earlier.
Councilwoman Francois has the floor.
Oh, so that's how we want to do it
Well,
tonight?
yes, that's
Okay,
how we're
go right
going to
ahead,
be
Councilwoman.
organized,
Go ahead,
Mr. Wright.
Councilwoman.
We're not going to interrupt each
No,
other.
go right ahead.
Thank you.
So we appropriated $750,000 in last year's budget, which we did not spend any of it. And we budget from year to year. So now we are talking about the money that we are appropriating in this year's budget, which is $750,000. We can't go back to last year's budget. We're addressing this year's budget.
Now can I speak?
You've spoken once. I want to see if anyone else wants to speak. I announced that at the beginning of the year, that that's how we're going to do it. It's not how we're going to do it tonight, Mr. Wright. It's how we're going to do it every night.
Well, I just got one question because everyone has kept,
Mr. Wright,
everyone has kept stepping in.
Mr. Wright, you do not have the floor.
Why don't I have the floor?
Because you've already spoken once. No one's.
Everyone else has spoken intentionally.
Wright. Mr. Wright, you asked me a question, I will answer it.
Go right ahead.
No one speaks twice until everyone speaks once. I'm looking to see if anyone else has anything else to say.
Go right ahead.
So no one else has anything else to say? What would you like to say, Mr. Wright?
Once again, I was asked last year about sidewalks. And then I said, well, I believe the students that are walking to school need sidewalks. Now, we were supposed to get together with the BOE, do all kind of stuff. That's not my issue right at this present time. So sidewalks were left alone. We didn't look at sidewalks. It was sort of put in the back pocket. Now, I don't like that. To tell you the truth, I don't like it. And it's my fault because I'm going to take the blame for it. Because I allowed it to happen because I thought things were going to move ahead and they were going to be pretty good. But I guess I was wrong. I guess things weren't going to go according to plan. I don't think things were going to according to what we, my fellow council members and I, had looked at. And it's a funny thing because we keep doing things here and they don't come to light until later on when everyone sits down and starts scratching their head like, oh, wait a minute, how did that work? Well, let's look at something. Everybody wants to scream when it comes down to budget saying, we cut taxes, we hold the line on taxes. But at the same time, I believe public safety of our children walking to school is paramount to buying the dump truck. And that's just me. I think it's paramount more than police cars. I don't understand why these things happen, and it's only at the last hour, meaning today, last hour, that you find out about these things. Now, the Financial Oversight Committee does its job. The administrative side does their job. I'm on land use, I do my job, but I always report exactly what we're doing in land use, what we're doing on the Recreation Advisory Committee, what we're doing at the Housing Authority, what we're doing at the Redevelopment Agency. So I'm kind of miffed. Sidewalks, $750,000. Well, Mr. Zelnick, Mr. Vornlocker, $1.25 million. What could we do with $1.25 million?
Not quite all the schools, not quite all the streets by the middle school. Depends on, you'd have to look at the staging, which ones are nearer the other ones. I mean, there's a lot of different factors involved. Overall, the cost estimate for the streets around the middle school is like 1.6 million, so you can't do all of them.
Right.
But you can do more than 4.
Okay. Because, see, I was going to take the 750 this year, but I was looking for my 750 from last year.
Okay, are you done?
I'll yield for a question.
Well, you're, that's not the way it works. Are you done?
Yes, if I'm going to get an answer about $1.25 million.
So you are done?
No.
Francois?
Yes, if I get an answer for $1.25 million.
So if you're not done, please continue.
I mean, I think we've heard what your request is. You made your point. So now we need to move on.
No, we don't need to move on.
So
I
I have a
believe.
question for the manager.
I'm sorry?
I have a question for the manager.
Go for it.
How much is our engineering department, our resources capable of doing in a year?
That's what I was going to.
Steve? Mm-hmm. I'm talking about 14,000 linear feet. I think you're pushing the limits at about where we were at.
I don't understand what that means.
So there were 4 streets proposed.
Mhm.
All right. And
Costing
so
how much?
About 750. Now the cost estimate is about 795,000.
So you're telling me we're capable of doing roughly $750,000?
Yeah, we're capable of doing about between 10 and 15,000 linear feet of sidewalk with the inspectors that we have. That might be pushing off other inspections on a consulting engineer that we would ordinarily do, but in-house we could probably handle between 10 and 15,000 linear feet through the season. You're talking about having an inspector out with the construction crew, full day every day.
So
putting one inspector on means that we're not going to split the job. You're not going to have multiple jobs going on at once. You're going to have them consecutively, not concurrently.
So I'm looking for a number.
Well, the dollar figure associated with this currently on an estimate is $795,000 on these 4 streets. It's 14,200 linear feet of sidewalk. I'm saying, talking with the engineer, that we wouldn't feel comfortable going over that number, not in-house. Then you have to go outside for consulting engineers and not handle it in-house.
So in-house, we can handle 790, Yes, 795, 800.
We're pushing the limits, but, because of the season that you lay concrete, that means that's, April through November, and
And last year, did you spend any of the budgeted money for engineering?
no.
Okay.
No, there was, and I guess that's kind of like the key to this whole thing, and I guess, is that unless there's an ordinance in front of this council, we're not spending any capital money. And that's the telltale sign. I put a capital ordinance in front of you, that means we're going to spend the money. If I don't put that ordinance in front of you, the money doesn't get spent, which means the money isn't appropriated out of the budget.
And how does that ordinance get put in front of you?
How?
Yeah.
It's on the agenda. You have
And the
an ordinance to
council
vote on.
requests
Two
that-
here, well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's
Which
the ordinance.
committee would push forward such a capital ordinance?
I would say that in this particular case, for sidewalks, it would probably be the Public Works Committee.
Okay, Mr. Vasanella,
Oh,
looks like you
thank
have
you,
something.
yes. Which Councilman Wright is on, Public Works. So I don't want to speak for Carl, I don't want to speak for Councilman Wright, but I think he wants to catch up a little here. Now, the only thing and I was going to ask what the version of what the mayor asked, so what are the pros and cons if we want to try to catch up a little, make up for some of last year, or what we didn't get to? What's the pros and cons of doing any of it contracted out and try to see if we can go beyond that 15,000 linear feet benchmark that you came up with?
I don't know that there's any pro as far as we're concerned. I mean, there's the cost of engineering and design, which will be the same no matter how much you do. The engineering and design has to be done. As far as the inspection costs and the fact that it would be contracted out to a consulting engineer, there's the cost is the cost. We have employee costs and we have consulting engineer costs. I mean, it'll probably be a little bit more for a consulting engineer than to handle it in-house, obviously. But let me finish my thought,
Sure.
Councilman. All right. The benefit is that they get done faster. I mean, why are we building sidewalks? I guess that's, the question would be, if we built sidewalks, why would we do that? And the answer clearly at this point has been to provide a safer place for children to walk to school. We're relying on a list that was developed from the Board of Education and the Police Department years ago where there are missing sidewalks. So the benefit is just that. I mean, there's not a quantitative benefit.
I wasn't talking pros and cons of the project. The main focus is safety. I think all of us, I know I support it. I'm talking about, and what I'm saying is, you're putting a cap of a practical goal of max of 15,000 linear feet.
We're saying that we could probably do 10,000 to
Probably
15,000
handle that in-house.
Yeah.
Could someone inspect it, could deter them, but, okay. What I'm hearing here, I think, there's a desire, most vocalized by Councilman Wright. I personally would like to see more action too, but the practicality. When I say pros and cons, I mean administratively and financially. Say we did the 750, but there was another street that was a few $100,000. Is it an administrative nightmare or big cost overruns to add to the figure and contract out one of those streets, is what I'm asking, to move in the direction of the councilman.
The 14,000 linear feet, it was estimated that the inspection and overseeing of the construction would be about $75,000, or 10%. So that 10% isn't factored into the cost if we handle it in-house. Now, granted, it's not like we're free. I mean, there are costs associated with our employees doing work, that when they don't do other work, then they're doing this. They're not, and so, there's, the costs are not associated. There's a
that's
number
why
of
I'm
factors
asking.
involved.
You guys
So
are
I'm saying,
administrators.
14,000 linear feet was going to cost $75,000 in inspection fees. All right, it's about a 10% cost associated with the inspections and overseeing of the construction. It's just general rule of thumb number. All right, and likewise, as far as this would be included regardless. I mean, it's about 10% for the design and surveying and.
So you got the
associated
paper
with that.
there. In general, is there a road or a couple small roads or one decent-sized road that we could put into the mix, contract out, and start to move into the direction of, I'm going to say, trying to make up for some of the
It would
lost
be
ground?
very,
I'm
very
trying to find a-
unfair for you to ask us that tonight. There are 18 roads on this street that have no sidewalks that have been identified. What needs to be looked at is what makes the most sense. And without having the opportunity to look at what makes the most sense, I don't want to give an answer.
Gotcha.
I mean, just to randomly do a sidewalk that has no real connection to the other streets that we're currently proposing to do would probably make no sense. I mean, I would rather say we would do a portion of a street to get to a number if that's what I'm told to do, rather than pick a street here tonight.
No, I was asking you to pick a street. What I'm trying to do is move in a direction, and we can, I don't know, Councilman Wright, if, when the mayor finishes with the rest of us, if there's a motion to be made, because I do want to push forward with this, but I think we have to figure out if and how, what else we're going to throw in, and is it feasible to do it? But I'm just trying to move towards the conclusion. I'm not trying to pick a certain street or sidewalk.
And wouldn't the if and how be vetted through the Public Works Subcommittee? Isn't that what they do?
Ms. Francois, again, no one twice to everyone once. Anyone else wish to speak? I've lost track of whether you've spoken yet, Mr. Chase.
I have not spoken.
Okay, I will trust you on that.
I just want to remind you of a very minor thing which you once promised me could be done as part of the first sidewalk contract. And that is, as John Luce told me, at the corner of Leet Lane and South Middlebush, there is not a curb cut where a wheelchair could go down
That's
to go
correct.
across the street. And if we could do that as part of the first job. I mean,
We-
this is trivial in the total expense, but I'll just remind you.
I still I have that request from Mr. Luce in my inbox, so I know that I still have it, and I will
Your
certainly.
very fat
We-
inbox.
My very fat inbox, but yes, I do recall that request.
Anyone else who hasn't spoken yet? Mr. Wright, would you like to speak again?
Oh, absolutely. And this time, it's not to my fellow council members. It's to the residents of the Fourth Ward. I took my eye off the ball. I missed it. And because I took my eye off the ball, I've allowed certain things to happen that should have never happened. I promise you, I won't let it happen again. I will not allow things to slip by that I thought were on the program and taken care of by my fellow council members. I slept at the switch. It's my fault. I take full responsibility for that lapse in judgment. So back to Mr. Township Manager, you're saying 750,000 plus some change because you went up to 790. We can't push out that 7.25 million. So we're going to fall back to whatever we can get in for that stretch of time. You're going to give me a number, again, $750,000 and some change, or it's whatever we put the ordinance out there for, something like that, right?
I know what I'm going to tell you is that if we handle it in-house, we're comfortable handling in-house what was proposed last year and then is again proposed this year. If you want to go to an outside consulting engineering firm, we can add a little bit to the cost, approximately 10% for inspection fees and inspections, and no, that's already factored in. Inspections and overseeing of the construction so that our inspectors aren't handling that. Remember that we're also proposing $2.5 million of road overlay. That's handled in-house by our inspectors as well. So there's only so much we can stretch ourselves, and certainly we can go outside and do
Okay, Mr. Township Manager, I'm
do
not
whatever
gonna
number
beat
you
the horse
want.
to death. I'm not going to beat the horse to death. 85% said what I was going to say. I'm going to leave the other 15% on the table and go along with this 750. And with the understanding, I'm not going to sleep on this one. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to speak? Ms. Francois, I cut you off.
No, I had just asked if and the how of how this is going to be done logistically needs to be vetted through the Public Works Subcommittee as a recommendation. I was just asking the question, if that could be the
Okay.
approach to go forward on this.
Absolutely.
Mr. Chase?
Well, it just seems to me if this job, what is identified as these 4 streets, is predicted to be 790,000, so we'll cut the street overlay by 40,000 to keep the total the same.
I don't think that we have to do that. The difference is there's
I mean, I don't want
money in
you
the
to
capital
say the
improvement.
budget
There's
says
money in the
700
capital improvement fund that we can cover the difference if there's an overrun. I'm not, we're making estimates here, Councilman. I mean, the engineer and I sit there and say, given the current cost of construction for concrete, we're making an estimate of $56 per linear foot. It could be $54 per linear foot. There's enough of a buffer built in that we'll be able to get this done with the current money that's budgeted, if that's what gets approved by council.
I just
It'll
wanted
be
it to be
fine.
clear that in approving this, if we approve this budget page, it's understood that we're approving doing those 4
That's the
streets, which are
project. The
estimated at somewhere in the 750 to 790,000.
That's the
And we're
project.
not going to be held back by the fact that what it says on this page is.
I'll make sure we go that extra block to get it done, because that'll be fine. That's the project, is those 4 streets.
One more question.
Wait, excuse
Oh, go
me.
ahead.
Same rule. Anyone else? Okay. I haven't spoken yet. First, Justin, I'm freezing. Can you fix that? Or not?
Actually, you need to talk to Carl. That has nothing to do with
freezing.
Justin.
Can we fix
Really-
that?
Really, you are?
See, I am.
'Cause I'm sweating.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe you're,
That's all right.
maybe you're under the gun. more than I am.
know.
Second of
It's my
all,
illness.
and this kind of goes back to what I said about the open space and the public works. This all costs money. We're talking about raising taxes, and you guys haven't heard the total yet compared to what we spent last year. And that's why these discussions, and it's great to have these discussions, but that's why it matters. There's money going on here, and we have to, the taxpayers are the ones who are going to pay for this. That's why we're talking about it. Mr. Wright, you had.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one small thing, and I think I know the answer, but who's going to put that ordinance together? You do, right?
Who?
The ordinance for
No, I don't prepare capital ordinances. Our bond council does.
the bond council does. Okay, that's all I wanted to know. Thank you.
Okay. Are we moving on?
Please. Yes.
Yes, we are moving on. Next, Mr.
So the third item on that list is Phillips Road Ravine Restoration. We're all aware of what that project is.
Just for the public, if you can, in a sentence or two.
All right, in a sentence or two, there's a ravine that runs behind houses on Phillips Road in the vicinity of Pine Grove Manor School. The ravine behind those houses is is township property. It's the brook that runs through. It's actually the 1 Mile Run brook, I guess, is a branch of the 1 Mile Run.
It's DeRussy,
It's DeRussie's brook. It's a
Oh.
branch of the 1 Mile
where
Run,
they found the
correct?
bodies.
Right, exactly, where they found the bodies. Hall's Mills murder, long before your time, Mayor. I think it was long before the councilman's time, too.
When I came
1921,
to
I
town,
believe.
there was still an
1700s?
occasional person saying on their deathbed, I knew this about that.
That's right. So this brook is behind these houses, and the backyards are collapsing into the brook, and it was determined through an engineering study that we need to fix it before their backyards are gone.
And the township attorney determined it was our.
It is our responsibility. Yes, he
Yes.
did.
Okay,
Yes,
go on.
so that's that project. Within the municipal building, bathroom
And I'm
upgrades,
sorry, did you say the cost? I don't recall.
$975,000.
$1 million
$1 million.
in the fourth ward.
bathroom upgrades and improvements in the municipal building for $30,000 and carpet replacement for $30,000. That's the limit of the improvements in the municipal building. The police department's capital budget is $27,500 for the replacement of their sidearms, $16,000 for the replacement of the radio system uninterrupted power supply, the UPS. It says PS here, but it should say UPS. And that's for $16,000. And then the Mobile Vision, and it's not Mobile Vision, but it just so happens that that's the manufacturer. Digital video recording system for the interview rooms, as the recording systems are mandated by the Attorney General's office now for them to have all of their interviews recorded, both audio and visual, for $11,500. Are there any questions about the police department capital budgets, non-vehicle? Okay. Within the public safety building itself, there's the phase 3 of the carpet replacement for that building for $30,000. Again, bathroom upgrades and improvements for $25,000. And phase 1 of the HVAC replacement, this is a replacement of an air handler on the roof, which is original equipment from 1991.
Does this include removing the one-time through use of water? Or cooling?
That system was replaced, I believe, is in the process of being replaced from the 2015 capital budget.
Good.
That's the Liebert unit that exists in the dispatch center.
I'm sorry, Mr. Vornwacker, I forgot to ask on the municipal building.
Yes.
What about the resurfacing of the building on the outside? That wouldn't be in capital, right? Would that be, are we doing that? Is that anywhere?
Last year.
Yeah.
That was in last year's budget.
Okay.
That was one where we had originally looked at trying to have those panels replaced in kind.
Right.
The cost was well over what was appropriated. We've made some contact with a couple painting contractors who have given us some ideas, and we should be going out to bid on painting it within the next 2 to 3 weeks.
Thank you, it really looks awful.
Wait,
sure does.
wait.
It's a different way to do it. It's the way I thought to do it.
Keep coming.
No, it's what we thought. I mean, so it's actually kind of like what the councilwoman and I, and it might have been you too. How do you paint it's almost like an anodizing.
Yeah.
It's like how do you paint a file cabinet?
Right.
Yeah.
So
it's what we all thought we could do that people told us we couldn't do.
Because the public is listening, there was one time that you said they were only going, maybe it was in financial oversight, I thought it was in public, it was only going to guarantee it for 2 years.
Right, that would be a straight paint job. This is a different process.
And how long will it be?
I don't know what the guarantee is. We've seen it, we've seen other places where it was done over 10, 15 years ago, and it looks like the day it went in.
Because when you anodize, the paint becomes part of the metal.
Exactly.
That's right.
And that's why, and actually, like I said, we talked about this and didn't understand why that wouldn't work. It's you run an electrical charge through it as you're adhering to paint, and it.
Right. Mr. Vassano.
So
That
real,
goes off into the ground.
so real quick, this goes back to 7, 8 years ago at Ken Daly, maybe 9, 10 years ago. Long story short, it was deemed that painting it properly was going to cost a fortune. At that time, or like a year or two later, as it was getting, it's aesthetic. So I mean, it's not crucial, but it is aesthetic, and it has gotten pretty darn bad. But what we were told, and he had done some research at the time, my understanding was that it would be less expensive and just as thorough of a solution time-wise to take, I don't remember the exact term that was used, but basically panels and bolt them to the existing ones.
That's what we were proposing to do, Councilman, and we found that it exceeded what our cost estimate was.
3 times the cost estimate.
Exactly.
So it's 3 times the cost estimate of the proper painting approach?
Yes.
Okay, so then 7, 8 years ago, something was weird because it was looked at as.
So someone was wrong.
something of the opposite, where it wasn't 2 or 3 times cheaper, but it would be cheaper and even easier, I think, environmentally, if I remember. Several reasons to do that.
There are a number of issues, including wind load on the building, because these things are the ones that go around our HVAC system on the roof. But it's, I'm just telling you that
So if
this
we're
is a
good,
much more
if you're good with that,
cost-effective way.
well, maybe this year we could just try to finish it off if we approve it.
We just said it's going out to bid, so
Okay.
that means it'll
Thank
be
you.
done
Can we
within
move on,
months.
please?
Yes, let's go.
Thank you. All right.
Thank
Are we good up to where now I'm on Public Works Building?
Yep.
Public Works Building, employee locker room improvements, re-roof of the pole barn, which is used to house all of the larger vehicles, and fence repair and replacement Phase 2, which is the security fencing around the Public Works yard. Questions?
Nope.
Okay. Public Works operationally, a vehicle key machine for $20,000. This is accountability machine that holds all of the keys, all of the keys that the Public Works Department uses, not just vehicles, but everything for all of our buildings and what have you.
So another sentence on that, because I hear people
Yes,
thinking that
and-
that $20,000 for a key copy machine.
No, right, and exactly, and that's why I hesitated on this one to let the Public Works Manager explain exactly what it is for you.
Similar to what they have in like car dealerships, where they have like a vault of keys and you have to sign them in and out.
And why do we have to spend $20,000 on that?
We have over 200 or 300 sets of keys, and it becomes, gives me the ability to hold the people taking the vehicles out more accountable for any issues that come up with the vehicles as far as maintenance or damage.
So in other words, if there's a dent in a vehicle, this will help you know who.
We'll know who
Okay.
signed the vehicle out.
And it's also will hold the keys for all of the buildings and offices and everything else that we have, so there's that accountability as well.
All right.
Okay? Your favorite, Mayor, Canal Road Guide Rail Replacement Phase 4.
Put all that into sidewalks now and cancel the guide rail replacement? Sorry, move on.
I
I'm
heard
kidding.
we're gonna put a whole lot more at Grouser Road than we planned on. And a portable equipment lift, which is just that. It's a lift that can be moved around the garage and used to work on the undercarriage of vehicles in various places rather than the fixed location that we have the lifts now. Now, SCAT building, acquisition,
Social services.
no, SCAT building, acquisition, demolition. You have an old list.
I'm not seeing that.
It's in your new stack of papers that were given to you today.
Go ahead.
$400,000 for the acquisition and demolition of the SCAP building at 429 Lewis Street. Council introduced the ordinance to authorize the acquisition of this property at the last council meeting. It'll have its second reading at your next council meeting for adoption. What this does is puts into place the mechanism for funding. How we choose to fund it will be a decision that we will all have to decide as far as bonding or cash capital is concerned. This is for not only the acquisition, but also for the demolition and any site remediation that would have to be done prior to the demolition. There's belief that there may be some asbestos in that building. So we're I think, erring on the side of caution. We're erring on the side of caution as far as the demolition costs are concerned. I don't believe that will cost $250,000 to demolish the building. However, until we get into the building, we won't know for sure. I've spoken with our construction official and our engineer, and there's some, certainly that there is a cost. It was estimated that the cost would, in an appraisal of the property, would be between $150,000 and $200,000 for demolition. That's probably a safer estimate, but just erring on the side of caution here. Like I said, we put in $250,000 for demolition. There's a $150,000 acquisition cost, thus the $400,000. This, not unlike the discussion that we had earlier, is part of a plan. If the cost is less than $250,000, obviously it's not money that will be budgeted or spent. It's just simply money that it allows us to spend up to that dollar amount for the demolition costs. The acquisition cost is pretty much set at this point at $150,000.
Okay.
Any questions there?
No.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Social services, bathroom and kitchen upgrades for $10,000.
One question.
Yes.
Is there any plan to make that building ADA compliant?
The social services building? It's kind of, we're only, I don't know that we could make it ADA compliant without putting in an elevator. And the costs associated with putting in an elevator and whether or not I know we've talked about this, the cost would be pretty much exorbitant to try to do that. And to retrofit an elevator into that building would be difficult. Certainly the first floor is the first floor, but the problem is the second floor.
Is the first floor ADA compliant?
The ADA compliant based on the year of construction.
Oh. Okay, let's move on.
Okay. We'll jump over open space right now and go to water capital. So on the water budget, we have $80,000 proposed for annual valve replacement program.
Where are we? Oh, here we go.
Got it? Should be at the end.
Another additional sheet.
You'll see that on page C32A.
That's the easiest place to look at it. That's what I'm going off of, C32A.
Okay.
Got it? Okay. $80,000 for annual valve replacement, $80,000 for annual hydrant replacement, $100,000 for the automated meter reading meters and transmitters. That's an annual project as well. I'm not even gonna. Is that what that meant? So somehow that's an interesting typo there. I was gonna say I don't know what those words are, but they look like they're almost like Inuit. Annual main replacement clean in line is $750,000. Repave the 12 Berry Street driveway apron, $30,000. A utility trailer for $20,000, and painting the interior of the Vliet Road storage tank, $250,000. Most of those are annual numbers that we've been doing the last couple of years, the hydrants and the valves and the meters and the main replacement and cleaning and lining, the first four.
Okay.
Okay?
So the priority numbers that are here, on here?
Yes.
Were
Those are the
provided by the department heads?
Yes. They are.
Because obviously we may not be able to do all this.
Obviously, yeah. The priority numbers were set by the department heads who prepared their budgets.
Okay.
Okay. All right, jumping to open space. This is the open space budget for parks maintenance, that portion of the open space budget. As you can see, the $3.6 million for the design and construction of Catalpa Park Phase 1. Upgrades and replacement of Inman Park playground equipment, $225,000. 10 Big Belly trash enclosures, $50,000. I'll just stop right there. That's one that some of you may not be familiar with, so I'll just explain that one very quickly. Councilman Chase, through a constituent in the First Ward, came up with an idea to put a garbage can down in Kingston, which is obviously the furthest point for our public works crews to go empty. This garbage can is a trash compacting garbage can that's solar powered. It actually sends us an email when it's ready to be emptied. Yeah, it's a pretty neat thing. And actually, when I was in Baltimore visiting my son in the Inner Harbor, they're everywhere along the Inner Harbor. It has become I guess there is a naysayer to my right here who didn't think that it would be such a great thing. Is it a pretty great thing?
It's pretty impressive.
All right, so there you have it. So
What's its email address? I may
But send it an email. It tells us when it's ready to be emptied, which, when you think about it, for a garbage can that's all the way down in Kingston, and it's just that one that we have down there to empty, it definitely, from a manpower point of view, to send a two-man crew down to empty that garbage can when it's not full is one, and then also it compacts to 8 times, I believe. So it only has to be emptied out, 1/8 the amount of times. So that certainly makes it worthwhile, and we found that so much so that perhaps we might find places in our parks where this would benefit us, and so that's what that expense is for.
I should tell Frank DiGiovanni.
You should tell Frank DiGiovanni that his idea has
What a good idea it was.
There you go. It was a good idea. Permeable pavers for Middlebush Park, $50,000. Sometimes they refer to them as grass pavers. They've been used for fire lanes in the past periodically. This is for that area between the 2 synthetic turf fields that leads up to the bleachers, where I dare say grass will never grow, and it's an area where vehicles go on it frequently. Maintenance vehicles and what have you, ambulances. So we thought that the best idea here would to put those grass pavers in so that it wasn't just mud, and ruts and mud. It's just not an area that grass can grow. It's all shale.
What would you do if you didn't have that?
Have a big giant mud pit, which
There's
is
no
what we
other way
have
to get
now.
around
Hmm?
spending that money to do what needs to be done? I'm just
No,
curious.
what I'm saying is that the fact that in between the 2 sidewalks and in between the 2 fields, the alternative would be maybe to excavate a tremendous amount of the clay and shale that the soil is currently composed with, and replace it with topsoil and plant seed. I don't know that the cost would be any less. It would probably be more. Because grass just will not grow there. And if you go to that field, you'll see what I mean. It's just that orangey red clay and shale, and it's just a couple weeds, mostly tire tracks from when vehicles have been driven on it in the mud. And it's the area where the ambulance would have to go, and it's the area where the maintenance crews go to get up near the press box and also clean the bleacher areas, right?
Okay.
Okay.
So these will be permeable pavers, but
They
they
are.
won't have grass growing in them.
Probably not, no. It'll probably still be that red clay. A Bobcat lawnmower to maintain the grass at $13,000. AEDs, these are automated external defibrillators. In the event that someone should go into cardiac arrest, these are the same type of equipment that our police officers carry in their patrol cars. And this was suggested, and it's not just suggested, it's strongly suggested by everyone that in the medical field, and I don't want to defer to a doctor, but I'm looking at one there. This was one of those things that once we have buildings, and where we have buildings, we can put one in there in the event that someone should have need for it.
So this money also includes the place to put them and signs saying they're here and et cetera? Or is that just for the equipment?
No, this is just for the equipment. And remember, this is currently where we can put them.
Okay. But, I mean, there's some minor cost to the...
Yeah, oh, absolutely. There's the box that they go in, and then when you open the box, an alarm goes off and all that stuff, yes.
Okay.
Okay. A shade structure for Inman tennis pickleball court, a shade structure, a pavilion, and that's what it's like. Basketball court upgrades in Bascom Park, Rutgers Heights Park, Nassau Park, and East Millstone Park. A synthetic turf pitch for Weston 1, Weston 2, and Williams Park. A 16-foot landscape trailer, a 16-foot enclosed trailer, and miscellaneous improvements and ADA access per action plan for $100,000. So there was obviously an ADA action plan done for all of our parks, and some of our equipment and parks were found to be not in compliance with ADA requirements, and this is to bring them up to current ADA requirements. And that's a multi-year project. Any questions on the open space requests?
It's coming out of Open Space Trust.
This is, all of those were open space capital, starting with the Catalpa Park Phase 1 design and all the way down to the ADA is all out of the open space trust. It's all work in the parks or equipment for work in the parks.
I trust that's more than just design for Catalpa.
No, that's construction. That's the design and construction of Phase 1.
Of Phase 1.
That's what it says.
Construction of Phase 1. Design of the park, construction of Phase 1.
3.6.
So we haven't built the cricket fields yet with that money.
That's correct.
And how far along is the design? Because I know that was out to
It actually was not out to bid, and so that's another one where you'll see an ordinance coming very soon that was not out to bid at this point. It's currently in design now. We're about to be in design.
Until the ordinance is in place.
Right.
No funds.
There's no, exactly. This funding will allow us to contract the design of the park. And until then, we had no funding mechanism in place to get the park designed. That's correct. Yes.
3.6 million seems like a lot compared to Middlebush Park, which was 8 some odd million. This is just Phase 1. I mean, and in perhaps your defense, although it's not your, every time I second guess this and then we go out to bid, it winds up costing more than even sometimes we estimate, but
The last
Just
phase of
seems like-
Middlebush Park was 3.25 million, I believe, give or take. Okay. And that was the last phase of the park,
which included,
the concession stand and the 3 natural turf fields.
Basketball court, softball field, and parking lot. This is an equivalent to the last phase of Middlebush Park.
okay.
Well, one reason it's more expensive is you have to do the driveway in, which is not the case for Middlebush Park, but it still seems like an awful lot. I know you sent me the
Send it to the mayor, too.
proposed,
Yeah, and I
the
went through it
estimates,
line,
and I doubted some of the items.
right, I went through it and I said, get rid of the beach volleyball court.
And that was, I
Right.
think, $14,000
Right.
on a $3.2
Right.
million bill. So you
Right.
saw that, I mean, I can only go with what the cost estimates that are given
Got
to
it.
me by the people who are proclaimed to be experts.
I got
I
it.
am not an expert in constructing parks.
And also, the estimate is based on a conceptual plan, not on an actual design plan. When the design plan is complete, you get a much clearer number.
Sure.
Generally, the conceptual plan number could be off by as much as 25%.
Let's hope it's high.
You aren't including those volleyball courts.
No.
No.
See the trouble you start? No, there are no volleyball courts in the plan. I promise you that. None.
Because apparently that was essentially a joke from one of the
Yes.
neighbors.
Okay, no volleyball courts. All right, move on, please.
So,
Well, I'm sorry.
you're done with your, where did this shade structure for the tennis think of? I mean, you're basically looking for some shade.
It
for-
came from the Recreation Department, I believe. Alice, she dismissed her. This came from requests from people who play tennis and pickleball who have no place to stand in the shade while they're waiting to play because the courts are full. So that's where the request came from.
At Inman, is the pavilion is the other pavilion's how far?
Other
from-
side of the
not
park.
close.
It's the other side of all the way to the other side. It's not near the tennis courts at all. It's the other side of the park, on the upper part.
Do we usually do that at parks?
No,
I'm just thinking,
Jim,
I see
guess the question is,
$50,000.
So my point is, it's a capital request. Do we usually do it? No, but we don't usually build parks either. I mean, but so we're building, I can only tell you that it was a request of residents who used the facilities. There was obviously enough requests that the director of recreation came and said there are people asking for some form of a shade structure at Inman Park by the tennis courts. It's not unlike the picnic pavilion that's being proposed in Catalpa Park by the cricket pitches for the same very reason, that there's no shade there, and they're out in the summertime, and there's no place when they're out there all day to stand under to keep cool. So we proposed a pavilion of similar nature for Catalpa Park, and this is what was requested of Inman Park. That's all I can tell you.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. Can you also put one on Weston?
I'm just wondering, we got to be conscious of the policy.
No, just simple.
Protocols we set. I mean, I'd like them all over the place, but I mean, I'm just wondering if there was a process by which we chose.
This was a request for a specific location. I mean, if you want to put picnic pavilions in all of our parks, then tell me you want to put them, and then you'll have a policy. We don't have a policy. This is, and when it comes to equipment in our parks, we put what we think people want or what people tell us they want. We have now proposed in this capital budget 3 cricket pitches that are going to propose to get artificial turf pitches on their fields. That's certainly not something that was proposed any other time, and we don't have them anywhere else. There's a first time for everything.
Any other input?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So we just, moving forward, we need to consider that these are all prioritized, and we have to figure out
Well, that's why I
where
was
we're
just,
gonna go.
that's why I was just trying to get some of the
These are not
background there.
cast
So
in
when we go
stone.
back and,
Yeah.
That's where the request came from.
These
Okay.
are wish lists kind of
yeah,
things.
no, that's why I was wondering if the
We
origin.
don't do everything that they request. We don't approve everything that's requested.
Anyone else?
And one follow-up, Mr. Mayor, separate from the tennis
yes.
thing, sorry. So if,
I'm sorry, my rule, you already spoke. Anyone else?
sure, no problem.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So if there's an item that isn't on here that is still, I'm going to say, in the works or not 100% sure if we're moving forward with, it can be put into an open space budget, or if decided by the majority of council, can be the open space trust fund can be utilized, even if it's not listed here, if something surfaces that we want to do. I just want to confirm I'm understanding the open space trust qualifications.
If your question is, can something be purchased from the open space trust that is not on this budget, the answer is yes, you can. By capital ordinance spending from a dedicated trust, you can do that. Is that your question?
Yeah, just wanted to confirm that this is the area that,
Anyone
this
else?
is the list. Thank you, Mayor.
Anyone else? Okay, I would just like to add, we can't do everything we want to all at once. Or I suppose we can, but I caution against that. Delayed gratification. I've said enough. Mr. Mayor.
I'm Mr. Manager, you're Mr. Manager. And we'll keep it that way if you don't mind.
It's getting late.
It's the way I want it to stay forever.
Can we switch seats, guys?
No.
That would be
Maybe I
fun.
want help. No, I could not do his job. No.
And I don't want to do yours. So, that completes the capital budget requests for 2016.
And
Oh,
they-
I'm sorry, no, it doesn't.
Technology.
See, I forgot the man to my left, so. Yeah, so the information technology capital budget is the one that I left out.
I saw 22 before. There it is.
C-22? Got it. Technology capital. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you.
so there's 155,000, does that sound right, Justin?
175,000.
175,000.
The $20,000 difference is open space. So the summary includes.
Actually, so, yeah, so did we do open space in the IT world yet? No, we didn't.
We haven't done that yet.
Okay. So there's a total of $175,000 in IT capital requested this year, of which $20,000 is for open space IT capital, and that ordinarily would sound very odd to you, but I think the $20,000.
Is it 20 or 35?
20 to open space.
20,000 for open.
15 is for recreation, but that's where the request came from.
Okay.
So go ahead, Justin, you can.
Okay. So starting at the top, it's $50,000 for our annual technology replacement plan, $30,000 for a piece of network security equipment that is end of life and needs to be replaced, $50,000 to replace and upgrade the AV systems in this room, along with some additional signage out in the lobby and inside of this room. This system is rather old and getting antiquated. $10,000 to install audiovisual systems in all of our municipal conference rooms. These are screens and associated hookups, essentially making all of our conference rooms, updating them to technological capabilities of this century. Well, and that's for 5 rooms. That's for 5 rooms in this municipal building. $15,000 for some upgrades to the large meeting rooms inside of the community center. This is to make it a little bit easier for folks to see. If you're in room 3 and you have a projector in room 1, you can't really see it. So we're going to add screens down the meeting rooms and some associated equipment with that. And the $20,000 for that is allocated into open space is for a pilot program of 3 cameras on open space properties where the open space consultant has identified high rates of vandalism, and these are for that purpose. So that's the $175,000 in technology requests.
What I worry about is, won't the vandalism then be directed at the cameras?
They are enclosed in cases that are, I hate to use the word like vandal-proof, because then that'll prove me wrong the first time that someone blows one up. But,
they're hardened.
They're hardened, thank you, that's a good word for it. They're hardened. They are designed to withstand a certain amount of punishment, and they're specifically for this type of application.
The slings and arrows of outrageous fortune.
Yes.
Well, they're usually up high anyway.
They are.
So, oh, I'm sorry, I had a question on, I'm assuming those 5 rooms, one's the council, one's the large council, one's the
all our
manager's room,
they're
and
all
one's
our
the
conference rooms.
engineering room. What's the 5th?
There's a
The
new small
small
conference room over in my hallway where my old office used to be.
Okay,
HR.
that's the 5th.
It's a
Okay.
small conference room that we built there because
Thank
we
you.
run out of conference rooms, as evidenced by tonight, where there's one in that room meeting tonight and one in that room, so conference rooms are at a premium.
I would just like to say on these monitors, I was at a BOE, the joint BOE council meeting. And they had a monitor, and we were talking about property, and we were able to put Google Maps up there, and it changed the conversation. It really made it much more efficient. And I know Councilman Basanello, I hope I'm not throwing you under the bus by spending money here, but you have long been saying, when we discuss these things, why don't we have GIS up? We spend all this money on GIS. We can look at the layers, and this will allow for that.
And just as a side note,
Excellent.
since you're giving the props there to Councilman Vasanella. He also inquired, and this system will allow us to do this down the road, and Councilman Vasanella made an inquiry of me probably about 2 months ago about why we couldn't have video conferencing in our conference rooms. And with this equipment, we will now be able to work towards having video conferencing. So that's another advantage to installing this equipment in our conference rooms.
And for people who say, gee, the town's spending a lot of money on these nice things, they also accuse us of not operating like a business. Well, this is operating like a business. This is making us more efficient. This video conference may save a trip and an airline ticket for someone trying to go somewhere. And it just makes us more efficient and more productive.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
So, go on, please.
I think we're done.
With this, we still have,
I'm saying,
Revenue.
so as far as
Then we'll
capital's
focus.
concerned, we're done.
Yeah.
All of the lines?
Oh, I had a question. I don't know what line.
sorry, go ahead.
Jay?
Right, yeah. Yes, that's what we're saying. We still have that.
Right.
Yes. So we're done with capital, everyone's done and satisfied with the no more questions, I can get these.
I don't know if it's
Good night,
capital or not.
gentlemen.
No, I don't know if it's capital or not. There was something I came up with having to do with our first aid contribution. It's not under capital, it's somewhere, I can't,
That's another line in the budget that we'll go through, I just need to.
I just had a question about it.
I'm just
but we can
trying to
wait.
ask if these gentlemen need to be at this table anymore.
No more questions, right?
No, unless they
Good
can turn
night.
up the heat.
Thank you.
Okay? Thank you, gentlemen. Kathy, you want to slide over here?
So as Mr. Hodgelick walks up and Ms. Moody changes her position, I would just like to thank them both. Ms. Moody, most people don't notice this because she sits at the back of the room, out of the view of the camera. She is not required to come to council meetings, but she is at almost every council meeting there in case we have a question, and also, I assume, to just monitor what's going on in the town, and I just want to express that I've noticed that, and I appreciate that. And Mr. Hodgelick is always there to answer questions, and in fact, last night in the storm, when I had a bunch of questions, he drove in through the storm to answer those questions for me, and so I appreciate you both. Mr. Manager.
Okay, the first of the all other lines is insurance. So the first line, and that's under the tab, insurance, near the beginning. Well, middle, I guess, maybe. This year, right before police, there you go. This budget, our insurance line budget is at $1,160,275. That's an increase of $42,924. The budget request for insurance, which is our liability insurance.
Thank you.
I was getting there, Mayor, is $1.11 million. That's an increase of the $42,924. That's our JIF assessment for the year. That's our joint insurance fund. And the other amount in that portion of the budget is $50,000 for workers' compensation insurance. Yes.
Questions?
Yes. Questions?
Continue.
Okay. We did health insurance with the HR, so I don't think we have to go over that one again, right?
Right,
I mean, that
we
one you
did.
heard during
Yeah,
the
we
HR
did that.
presentation at the last budget meeting. The next one is aid to volunteer fire departments. Right.
Go ahead.
This is budgeted at $46,774, and that's what it was budgeted at previously. This is the insurance the life insurance policy that we carry on all of our volunteer firefighters is the $30,000. And the aid to the fire districts, which is state aid, is a pass-through for our fire districts, so that we get money from state aid that we then pass on to our fire districts. A portion of our state aid is earmarked for the fire departments, so that goes on to the fire districts, and that's $16,774.
All right, so, questions?
This is not what you're talking about, Councilman Vasanelli, yet.
No.
Yeah.
I was
But-
thinking else.
Okay.
Well, wait, if there's no questions, I'm looking at, in 2014, 2015, the actual was more than the budgeted by about 11,000.
When the requests come in for life insurance, if we run out of money in volunteer fire, we go to the first aid fund. So sometimes we have to jockey the money back and forth. If we run out of money there, we go out of the regular OE budget. But so far, we've had enough in the budget for first aid. It's an estimate based on experience.
This is money that we pay out when someone dies.
So,
So it depends on, I mean, I hate to be like kind of cold like this, but it depends on how many people die in a year.
no, I understand, it's just, so you're actualizing this and making an estimate? I mean, it's just that in the last 2 years, we've exceeded budget. Should we be budgeting more?
Well,
That's all I'm asking.
We've taken it from the first aid
Okay.
budget. The fire lately has gone through more, but we haven't gone over budget of the combined two.
Okay.
But if we keep having more, if we keep having an expense that's greater than what we budgeted for, why do we keep budgeting the same amount?
John House, who's the department head in charge of fire prevention, keeps a real good control over this. And so far, between the two accounts, it's been fine.
I mean, I'd just like to point out that no money was spent as of 9/30/15 this year, of last year. So I don't know what was spent in the last quarter of the year, but there were none in 2015. You're looking at 13 and 14, and the actual for 15, there was nothing charged to that line as of 9/30. It certainly is something that fluctuates.
Okay.
All right, and the actual in 2013 was 15.5. Half of what was budgeted. It was only in that 1 year that there was an actual that was exceeded the budget, and that's 2014. I'm looking at my sheet.
I
That's
see
what my
what you're
sheet
saying.
says. Calendar year 2013, the actual was 15.5. Calendar year 14, it was 45. And I'm sorry, and the actual shows 45, but I'm thinking that, was there, the 2015 was,
2015, that third column is actually duplicate of 14.
yeah, that's a mistake.
It's a mistake.
Oh,
That's a mistake. And as I say, I knew that had to be a typo, because there's nothing in the actual
Those are the
column.
exact same numbers.
Yeah.
Oh, the
Now I
actual.
see.
You follow what I'm saying? There's nothing in the actual
Right.
column at all. It's
It's a
blank.
mistake.
So that's clearly a mistake. And then in 2013, it was only 15.5. Okay,
Got it.
got it.
Okay.
All right. The next other is unclassified.
Yes.
Yeah, but why don't I see it? And I'm missing it.
it's a page right after fire.
Oh, you know why? That's why I don't, okay, thank you. Yes, I did want to do first aid contributions. Okay, so first aid contributions are 60,000 is the amount budgeted, and that's the amount budgeted in the previous year, and the previous year before that, and the previous year before that. This is based on a calculation. The $53,500 is based on the call volume of the East Millstone First Aid Squad, Kendall Park First Aid Squad, the Kingston First Aid Squad, and the Rocky Hill First Aid Squad, which based on, that's, Franklin Somerset is not included in that because several years ago, Franklin Somerset opted to go to a fee for service for its patients, and the ELS committee at that time made a recommendation that their annual contribution from the township be discontinued. And the first aid squad was certainly involved in that decision-making process themselves. So that's what that money is for. You had a question about it, Councilman?
Yeah, no, and it's one committee I've been on since day one. So you're right, but what's happened in the last year and a half approximately, Kingston kind of fell off the radar.
They did.
And then we adjusted, a few years we adjusted, like you said, to make up for call. Okay. Rocky Hill, they were kind of out of commission for a bit. They came back into, I believe, full service last year.
They did.
So for whatever reason, I can't speak for them, there was some confusion on their part about paperwork and whether they were getting money or not money. Bottom line is, and I didn't get the minutes of the meeting, but the last ELS meeting, this came up, funding in general, and the one item that, two items really, but the one that's most relevant to this column is Rocky Hill now seems to be doing well. Last year they said they did a full year's service. They've been servicing the area now. They, upon discussion in a group, and I can elaborate, but I don't think it's necessary, all the squads were represented there, along with Robert Wood Johnson. Felt that Rocky Hill is deserving of something now that they're the smallest and do the smallest volume, and it was recommended. They requested, and the rest of the group had no problem, agreed that it would be reasonable, was that they get $5,000 contribution. The two largest, Kendall and East Millstone, get the bulk of that 53 divided on call volume, et cetera. But Rocky Hill has not gotten anything for years. They are, again, from what they say, fully operational. And I believe it's very reasonable to, matter of fact, they had a request, two separate requests for $5,000 each. The other one had to do with equipment and whatnot, so I don't know where they went with that. They needed to submit, supporting documentation, I assume, for it to be considered. But the $5,000 just to be a contribution, I think is needed and necessary.
I've spoken to Sergeant Brian Farrar, who's the
Right, he's
person
the
in charge of
staff-
the ELS, the staff person.
who runs it.
They had to be in compliance for the full year, which they now have.
Right.
In October, which is far enough into 2016 that it can be determined if they stay in compliance and what the volume is. I'll be getting a percentage from Sergeant Farrar of how to break up this 53.5.
Well, what came out of the discussion was not breaking up the 53. It was adding 5,000 to the 53.
No.
You're shaking your head. I was at the meeting.
But that's not in the budget. The 53.
That's why I'm bringing it up now. It's not.
It is the pool that gets split, and it'll be split among the three of them.
Okay, but we create that pool. We've raised it and lowered it over the years relevant to different reasons. And I'm not sure what the confusion is, but the other two groups are not looking, the other two, Kendall Park and East Millstone, which is the backbone of our services here in town, weren't looking or expecting their piece to be rated. It was,
Well,
I'm not here to fight their battle.
I certainly think that no one ever
meeting.
looks to have their money cut, and I would find it extremely difficult to believe that East Millstone and Kendall Park would say, yeah, sure, I'm sure they would like that the money be increased from the town, but I don't know that, that's a council discussion.
Okay, so
not an ELS
so
discussion.
I'm going to make a motion. The bottom line is they work on a shoestring budget. They haven't gotten an increase in years. They get $20-some thousand apiece, or one gets a little more than the other. So we're talking about them not having had a dime increase in several years, and I don't know if they're happy or not, but that's one thing. But now we're saying, well, not only have you gotten a dime increase in years, all their costs keep going up,
Okay, state your motion.
but
State your-
we're asking to
you-
take
you
money
made a
out
mo-
of them.
You made a
I'm-
motion, and
I'm-
now you're discussing, so
I'm-
make a
I'm-
motion.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. I'm motioning, suggesting that we add $5,000 to it, and assuming they're in compliance, that would be likely to be distributed to Rocky Hill.
So we have a motion, do we have a second?
Seconded. Since if I have a
Move-
heart
move-
attack at home, it'll be Rocky Hill that comes to get me, I would certainly support 5,000 for them.
Moved and seconded, is there a discussion? My discussion is we keep raising this budget, and I understand that it's a safety issue, but
Mr. Mayor, I don't understand why this was not vetted through public safety, through the Public Safety Subcommittee. This is
Well,
the first time this is coming up.
I'm sorry, I don't want to speak.
so, yeah, I don't think that was a question directly for me, but.
No,
Well,
yeah.
it goes through ELS, and ELS, via the squads, via sergeant who handles a lot, or myself, we bring the information to council, if relevant,
Okay.
and
Okay.
seldom is there, this is.
Anyone else, any other discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk. So the question is add $5,000 to the budget for ELS, intending it to go to Rocky Hill.
Deputy Mayor Chase,
Yes?
Councilwoman Francois,
I have to abstain because I'm not really clear what I'm voting on.
Mayor Kramer,
No.
Councilman Prasad,
Yes.
Councilwoman Sherman,
Yes.
Councilman Vasanella,
Yes.
Councilman Wright.
Okay, passes. Next item.
Okay?
Yep.
The next category is one called unclassified.
Hillary's emails.
It's right behind utilities. It's one group of tabs back, the second one down.
Okay? Just before commissions, near the end. Got it? We're all there. Tax appeal refunds. $500,000 budgeted in 2016. 500,000 was budgeted in 2015. So no change in that. Saying,
Actual's been running higher, though.
It did in 14.
Go ahead.
It ran higher in 14, and we allocated the money at the end of that year to cover it. 2015 actual came in at 496,000. We just made it within the 500,000. We get a projection from our tax assessor and our tax collector of what's outstanding and what they expect to hit in 2016. And in conjunction with Andy Hodgelick and the manager, it was
Your best
determined that
guess.
with what we have in the reserve now, the additional
So it's your
500,000
best
should be
guess.
sufficient.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay.
That's where we're at.
All right.
We feel comfortable with that number.
Well, I imagine that the tax assessor can, to some extent, pace the negotiations so that if it
I
looks as
think
if
the
we're going
bigger,
to
the
run
bigger
over,
concern
he'll
is the tax court.
make it
We're-
last into the next year.
It's more the tax court, and we're kind of at their scheduling of their mercy when it comes to the scheduling. Commissioners, we already did. State expenses, I think, are pretty self-explanatory. That's statutory expenditures. There's really not a whole lot of control over that. That's showing a flat. And that's Social Security, pension payments, and Social Security, and state unemployment. Interlocals is the Board of Education, Transportation Interlocal. This is a past, this is a money in, money out budget. So really, what we budget on the OE side, we also budget on the revenue side because it's a formality of the budget process, I guess is the best way to put it. The health interlocal is the next page under that tab. This is we have a 5-year contract with the health department. I believe we're in year 2 now.
Yes.
We renewed this contract in 2015, for 2015. So this would be year 2 of the contract. It has a contractual 2% increase. That's what is reflected there in the 2016 budget at $629,112. County Senior Transportation. This is the contract with Somerset County to operate the senior citizen transportation bus. Our bus, their driver, their expenses related to it. It was increased to $71,013 this year which is 2% over the, did you talk to them about that?
I didn't have to talk to them.
They just did, okay. But how did it come to light? I'm sorry, just bear with me for a second.
They had done it at 2%.
Microphone.
Okay.
Microphone, please.
This is just a discussion. The initial cost was over the 2% that was proposed by Somerset County, and it was questioned, and it's a 2% increase, which is the more appropriate increase that we would expect, not something over 2% from one of our fellow government entities,
So-
given a 2% cap.
I'm sorry, the 71,000 is for the driver?
That's to run the bus,
So, and the gasoline and,
to run the bus, the whole service. It's just we
Okay.
provide the bus, they provide everything else.
okay,
Yes.
I thought it was, okay, good.
And to be truthful, Mayor, even if it was just the driver, that's still cheaper than we could provide a driver
Okay.
when you factor in benefits and pension costs and everything else. And I believe that, and again, that's the BOE transportation. The next tab that would be an other is library. This is just the tax collected. And then, again, money in, money out. 16 budget is $3,008,680. And that's the amount of library tax.
And that's determined by state formula?
That's
there's no-
by state formula, correct?
How come it's actually down for the coming year?
I'll let Andy answer that one.
I haven't confirmed that calculation.
Yeah.
It's based on
It's
2
based
years
on-
ago, and it's bizarre calculation.
It is a bizarre calculation, and it's based on how many years ago? 3. It's a 3-year average, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. There's some things I just don't question, Mayor, and I think that's one of them, because this one over here and that one over there know how to do the calculation, and I don't really want to learn how.
Good for you.
That's why I have a CFO and a financial consultant.
Yes.
They gets paid big bucks.
So, Capital Improvement Fund. This is exactly. This is to be determined based on the methods of funding and the amount of capital projects that council approves. So, debt service, that's not subject to approval. The 2016 debt service is budgeted at $4,180,000. I'm sorry, strike that. $4,645,705, which is a $361,719.58 decrease from the previous year's debt service. And that's
Okay.
all the others. There are no other others.
All right, well then,
What about
let's start again from the top.
Let's start again from the top. Now that they're all gone, let's start from the beginning, and we can see where.
Anyone have any general questions?
Well, I'm looking at the agenda. What happened to state expenses, salaries and wages? We're not talking about any of this stuff?
Well, the salaries and wages have been discussed. There's not much to discuss as far as the salary and wages of our current employees. Those are all in each individual budget. And each request for additional personnel was discussed by each individual department head. There were only the part-timer in the fire.
Yeah,
fire
I understand that part.
That's it.
So what are state expenses?
Statutory expenses, that's Social Security and pensions. I just did that. I just did that
You
one.
did?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, that's what you were lumping
yeah,
into that
that
category.
is
Okay, all right, I got it.
state expenses, and it's Social Security and the pension payments.
Okay,
Unfortunately, those are all statutory, and we have to pay them.
got it.
The federal government and the state government say so.
Okay.
And they'll notice if we
That doesn't apply to Christie.
No, he doesn't believe in, let's not go down that road.
Let's not go down that road.
All right. Any other questions?
Mayor, just mention, because I know there was so much discussion with the manager and a few other colleagues concerning some hopeful upgrades we can do with Franklin Township Little League. And we need, or at least I believe, I'm talking to manager, we need to see if we get some clarification concerning funding mechanisms from our attorney, and also hopefully a little bit more information from the actual Little League. So I'm just throwing out there that hopefully there might be something I can bring to the meeting next week relevant to this if we can get the information, but nothing that I specific have to add or request at this time. Just wanted to throw it out there so people think I was dropping it on them next week.
Okay. Seeing no other questions, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Second.
I'm sorry, the manager, okay. Moved and seconded, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned.